Chapter 2565 The Primordial Realm? Jianqin has actually reached the primordial realm? Whether it was Dang Wenqin, Guna, or Lian Qi, they were all shocked when they sensed Jianqin's presence. Jianqin was clearly only a divine king from what they had heard, but now he did not seem like a divine king at all. He was clearly a primordial realm expert. Moreover, his presence was so powerful that he was definitely not a regular primordial realm expert. Impossible. That's impossible. How did Jianqin break through from the divine king to the primordial realm in just a few short decades? Lian Qi struggled to accept this. Breaking through from the divine king realm to the primordial realm was a major realm of cultivation. It seemed like a single step, but countless young geniuses in the saints' world had been stuck at this bottleneck for countless years. As a matter of fact, some divine king would never be able to reach this level of cultivation in their entire lives. However, Jianqin had overcome the hurdle that obstructed countless people in just such a short amount of time. Not only did he reach the primordial realm successfully, but his presence even seemed to have reached mid-infinite prime. How on earth did he cultivate? At this moment, Dang Wenqin and Gu Na were filled with questions and curiosity. Jianqin, why have you come? Shangguan Mu. Er's heart warmed slightly as she looked at the furious Jianqin. She asked gently. Her voice was no longer as cold as before when she faced Jianqin. Instead, it was extremely gentle. Jianqin grabbed Shangguan Mu, Er's slender hand, tightly. Blood had already dyed his hand red. Even though Jianqin knew that this was only a superficial wound to Shangguan Mu, he could not help but feel pained. If I didn't hurry over, I don't even know if I would be able to see you again. Mu, tell me, who injured you? Was it the two of them? However, there was unconcealable, killing intent in his voice. Towards the end of his sentence, there was no need to mention it. Towards the end, he glanced past Gutong and Babu sharply as killing intent filled his eyes. Gutong and Babu actually felt a chill for some reason under Jianqin's gaze. They felt like Jianqin's gaze was two sharp swords that could stab into the depths of their souls, making them shiver. Gutong and Babu's minds immediately shuddered. They looked at each other and saw the seriousness in each other's eyes. Even though they hadn't fought yet, just from this gaze, they understood that this young man's strength was not to be underestimated. Who are you? Let go of young Miss Muir's hand. At this moment, Dao Gongming flew over from afar with disheveled hair. When he saw Jianqin actually holding Shangguan Mu, Er's hand, he immediately became furious. In his eyes, he had already decided on Shangguan Mu, she was fated to be his future wife. So how could he allow an unfamiliar man to touch her so intimately? Dao Gongming's soul was injured, so his mind was rather muddled right now. He failed to sense Jianqin's presence at all. All he did was charge over furiously, directly attacking Jianqin. Young master, don't! Gutong called out. He knew that Jianqin was anything but ordinary. With a flash, he blocked Dao Gongming's path. Piss off! However, it was already too late. Jianqin called out, and with a wave of his hand, a streak of light erupted. It turned into a resplendent streak of light that enveloped Gutong and Dao Gongming with powerful sword intent. Gutong also wore a low-quality god artifact. The armor shone with dazzling light, forming a powerful barrier around him. He used his body to protect Dao Gongming. The waterfall-like sword qi constantly struck Gutong's body, immediately causing the radiance from the god artifact to tremble violently. The energy of the god artifact declined at an unbelievable rate. Babu became extremely stern when he witnessed this. Jianqin's strength had completely exceeded his expectations. Jianqin, stop! Babu called out. He also wore a low-quality god artifact as he wielded a sword. He directly swung it at Jianqin's barrier of light in an attempt to save Gutong. As he knew Jianqin was powerful, Babu used his full strength this time. Even the sword in his hand was a low-quality god artifact. The Dao clan was an Archean clan. As a primordial realm expert of the Dao clan, he did not lack god artifacts, even though he only belonged to a branch that did not possess great status. Jianshin's eyes turned cold. He formed a sword with his right hand and directly extended it towards Babu. Immediately, the laws of the world condensed. Supreme laws of the sword revolved around Jianshin, shooting towards Babu as he extended his finger. The sword chi was several meters long, illuminating the entire Taoist sect of divine sound with its dazzling light. It shot towards Babu with an unstoppable force. Babu's face changed. Even with his cultivation as a fourth heavenly layer infinite prime, he shivered when he faced the sword chi. He felt a great sense of danger. How can Jianshin be so powerful? Babu was shocked. He had heard of Jianshin's name before, but it was only limited to the desolate plain. The matter of Jianshin destroying the Gloomwater sect had not spread even now. So many people's understanding of his strength remained at the level of the Divine King. In the blink of an eye, when Jianshin's sword chi shot out, Babu quickly changed the direction of his attack. His god artifact was originally aimed at the barrier of light around Gutong, but now he was forced to swing it towards the powerful sword chi. Boom! The two collided and immediately erupted with a deafening rumble. Violent ripples of energy wreaked havoc in the Taoist sect of divine sound as a storm. Dang Wenxin and the others moved in time, casting down a powerful barrier to isolate the storm of energy so that it would not affect the sect. With their cultivation as chaotic primes, it was naturally nothing difficult for them to stop the ripples of energy from a battle between infinite primes. Babu forcefully received Jianshin's strike within the barrier. His face immediately changed slightly, and he grunted as he was blown away. The god artifact sword in his hand dimmed, and even the low-quality god artifact armor he wore dimmed as well. So powerful! Babu was shocked. Disbelief filled his face. Only when he truly clashed with Jianshin did he understand just how terrifying Jianshin's strength was. With his cultivation as a fourth heavenly layer infinite prime, he could not even withstand a single strike from Jianshin. If it were not for his god artifact armor, the strike probably would have injured him. However, even with that being the case, his organs were still shaken up. Chapter 2566. Jianshan paused when he heard Shangguan Mu-er's voice. He did not chase after them. Instead, he glared at the two infinite primes and asked sternly, "Mu-er, they caused her wounds, right?" This time, Shangguan Mu-er did not try to hide it. She nodded gently. "They're all small wounds. They're fine." Jianshin glanced at the pale-faced Dao Gongming, whose soul had been injured. He had seen similar situations many times before, so he naturally could tell with a single glance why Shangguan Mu-er and the two primordial realm experts were fighting. He immediately snorted coldly. If it was just the Divine King, then so be it, but they're two primordial realm experts. Yet they actually attacked you without any regard for their statuses. I can't just let this matter slide. Since they've injured you, I'll make them pay 1,000 times over. Jianshin's killing intent skyrocketed. With that, he charged towards Gutong, who protected Dao Gongming, and directly threw out a punch. The punch was dazzling. Powerful sword chi condensed in the fist, and it tore through the air, causing space to distort. Terrifying sonic booms rang out in the air. Not only did Jianshin use the laws of the sword with the punch, but he also used the laws of strength as well. As a result, his strike was extremely terrifying, enough to make people shiver from the bottom of their hearts. Gutong's face changed drastically. He shivered from the bottom of his heart as he faced Jianshin's punch. He felt life-threatening danger. Moreover, the punch had locked onto his presence, preventing him from dodging or dodging. The only option before him was to take it head-on. Gutong bellowed out. The energy of a second heavenly layer infinite prime surged out like a tsunami, erupting without holding back at all. He poured half of his energy into his god artifact armor as he drew a huge sword that was as wide as a palm. The Dao clan was one of the Archean clans. All the primordial realm experts from the Dao clan would not lack low-quality god artifacts. As a result, Gutong's huge sword was also a low-quality god artifact. In a split second, he used the two-handed great sword as a shield, placing the wide sword in front of him. Boom! Jianshan's punch had the power to destroy the heavens and the earth as it hit the two-handed greatsword. Suddenly, the two-handed great sword began to shine and tremble. It was as if the artifact spirit was wailing. Gutong paled. When Jianshan's fist landed on the sword, a terrifying force that he was unable to resist was transmitted to his arm as well. The force was so great that even with his low-quality god artifact armor, he struggled to protect himself. Kacha! Sounds came from his arms, and then both of his arms fell down powerlessly. His arms had been shattered by this terrifying power, and the huge sword in his hand was also blown far away, smashing a big hole in a nearby mountain. However, Jianshan's punch did not slow down at all. After knocking away the sword, it continued onwards with terrifying force, shattering Gutong's protective energy. With a heavy rumble, it struck Gutong's chest heavily. Spurt! Gutong vomited blood as he opened his mouth, along with many pieces of his organs. His low-quality god artifact armor rapidly dimmed. It was completely unscathed, but the terrifying power in Jianshan's punch still passed through the armor and struck Gutong. The defenses of the god artifact armor were indeed very great, but Gutong was only a second heavenly layer infinite prime after all. The difference between him and Jianshan was just too great, so great that even with the god artifact armor it was useless. Gutong was blown far away by Jianshan's punch. Dao Gongming, who was behind him, also produced a painful cry after being struck by Gutong's punch. His body basically stuck to Gutong's as they were blown away together. How has Jianshan suddenly become so powerful? The strength he's showing now is completely different from what the rumors say. His strike is already at the level of a 6th heavenly layer infinite prime. This is simply unbelievable. The 3 ancestors of the Taoist sect of divine sound who had been fighting the entire time all sighed in amazement. If it were not for the fact, they would have never believed that Jianshan, who was rumored to be a divine king, could become a primordial realm expert in just a few decades. Moreover, he was a great expert among infinite primes. They were all old monsters who had lived for several million years. A few decades was just the blink of an eye in their eyes. Even if he could make any improvements in such a short amount of time, it would be almost negligible. How could he be as heaven-defying as Jianshan? After all, the further one's strength went, the more difficult it would be to increase. In particular, after reaching the primordial realm, one would not be able to make a single breakthrough even after several millennia, tens of millennia, or even hundreds of millennia. Jianshan was only a divine king a few decades ago, yet he possessed the battle prowess of a 6th heavenly layer infinite prime a few decades later. In their eyes, this was basically a miracle, a legend. Of course, they still did not know that Jianshan had already killed a 9th heavenly layer infinite prime in the Gloomwater sect. Otherwise, who knew what they would think? On the other side, Babu bellowed out furiously, "Stop! We're from the Dao clan." However, before he could even finish, Jianshan arrived before him as a streak of light. He used the laws of strength and the laws of the sword at the same time, directly sending Babu flying with a punch. Babu was a 4th heavenly layer infinite prime. Coupled with his god artifact armor, he was still unable to block Jianshan's strike. Blood spurted from his mouth as he smashed through a mountain. Jianshan pursued. His eyes were cold as they shone brightly like swords. Invisible sword intent revolved around him. He extended a finger and gently waved it towards Babu from several kilometers away. Immediately, a streak of light suddenly appeared. It was extremely thin, like a strand of hair shining brightly. In a flash, he appeared several miles away and struck Babu with a powerful sword intent. Even though the streak of light seemed insignificant, it was indeed much more powerful than Jianchen's previous 2 strikes. This was because he had used the power of the ultimate way of the sword. With the ultimate way of the sword, even regular sword chi would become much more powerful in his hands. Boom! With a loud bang, Babu's body, which had just stabilized, was once again sent flying. This time, the damage he received was even more severe. He kept spitting out blood, and his face had already turned pale. Cracks had even appeared on his low-quality god artifact armor on his waist. Chapter 2567. Even the low-quality god artifact had reached its limit, becoming slightly damaged. This was more than enough to demonstrate just how shocking Jianchen's strike was. Moreover, when the low-quality god artifact was damaged, an irresistible power passed through the protection of the god artifact and directly struck Babu. The flesh on Babu's waist immediately became a mess. He was unable to stand up straight, and his organs had been reduced to dust. Jianchen's ultimate way of the sword was just too powerful. If it were not for Babu's low-quality god artifact armor, he probably would have been directly cleaved in half with his cultivation as a 4th heavenly layer infinite prime. No wonder Mu has always been obsessed with Jianchen. She's completely unmoved by Junking's pursuit. Jianchen's talent really is extraordinary. It's rare in the current world. With such shocking growth speed, I even suspect that he's the reincarnation of some supreme expert from the saint's world. Gu Na stared at Jianchen as she praised from the bottom of her heart. So what if he grows quickly? It's not like there aren't monstrous geniuses in the saint's world with monstrous talent, but just how many of them can truly reach the apex? 99% of them die along the way. Lian Qi said, secretly. He did not take it seriously at all. However, in reality, had begun to truly value Jianchen. Jianchen hasn't even used a god artifact, yet he possesses the battle prowess of a 6th heavenly layer infinite prime. It's rumored that he possesses a low-quality god artifact, the 9-star sword of heavenly ways. I wonder what level he'll reach once he uses a god artifact. Lian Qi thought as caution filled his eyes. At that moment, he no longer dared to underestimate Jianchen, as he had also realized just how shocking Jianchen's rate of growth was. Although he still did not need to worry about Jianchen right now, he also understood that with Jianchen's rate of growth, Jianchen would catch up to him before long if this continued. Dang Wenxin stared at Jianchen as well, as if she wanted to see through Jianchen completely. She growled, "This Jianchen actually has no intentions of stopping. The people of the Dao family can't die in our Taoist sect of divine sound, or we'll be in trouble. It's time to stop him." On the other side, sword qi condensed around Jianchen. It shone with dazzling light. Just when he was about to continue attacking, Dang Wenxin blocked him with a flash. "Jianchen, that's enough." Dang Wenxin sighed gently. Her emotions were extremely mixed. Their Taoist sect of divine sound did not dare to stop the experts of the Dao family when they attacked Shangguan Mu-er. They could only watch as the only successor of the 3rd ancestor, Shangguan Mu-er, endured the combined attacks of 2 primordial realm experts from the Dao family as a divine king. However, now that Jianchen had heavily injured the 2 primordial realm experts of the Dao family in an absolutely crushing manner, she had no choice but to step forward to stop Jianchen and protect the people of the Dao family. This made Dang Wenxin feel extremely helpless. Jianchen's face sank. He could sense a mountainous pressure from Dang Wenxin. He felt like he was standing before a mountain when he faced Dang Wenxin. The threat that Dang Wenxin posed to him was even greater than Su Rant's. Mu-er is a disciple of your Taoist sect of divine sound. Now that she's been injured by these outsiders, as one of the ancestors of the Taoist sect of divine sound, not only do you not protect Mu-er, but you even help the people who injured her instead. Is this how your Taoist sect of divine sound treats its own people? Jianqin growled. He was extremely furious. Even though he had heavily injured Ba Bu and Gutong, his fury did not diminish at all. The Taoist sect of divine sound's attitude made him shiver. He really did not dare to imagine just how severe the situation would have become if he had come a day later. He did not even know if he would be able to see Mu again. Dang Wenxin sighed gently. Her face was filled with helplessness. She said to Jianqin secretly, Jianqin, we value Mu as much as you do. Mu is the only successor of the third ancestor. She's directly tied to the future of our Taoist sect of divine sound. So our Taoist sect of divine sound will naturally take great care of her. However, these people come from the Tao clan. The Tao clan is one of the archean clans of the Saints' world. They're far, far too powerful. Our Taoist sect of divine sound can't afford to provoke them at all. Otherwise, not only would our Taoist sect of divine sound be unable to protect Mu, but even our sect would probably be reduced to ashes. The strength that Jianqin had displayed had already gained Deng Wenxin's acknowledgement. Afterwards, Deng Wenxin introduced Jianqin to the strength of archean clans in detail, allowing Jianqin to gain a rough understanding of them. Jianqin, let's just end this matter here. Whether it's to the Taoist sect of divine sound or our Tianyuan family, the Tao clan is a colossal existence that we can't afford to provoke. Shangguan Mu arrived before Jianqin as well. She gently grabbed Jianqin's arm with her bloodied hand, stopping Jianqin from attacking. She understood Jianqin's personality. She knew that if this continued, it was extremely likely for Jianqin to kill the primordial realm experts, or Dao Gongming of the Tao clan, in a single stroke. If things really developed to this point, it would be very serious. The light in Jianqin's eyes flickered, and the sword intent on him gradually receded. The Tao clan was just too powerful. They were basically no weaker than the heavenly palace of Bixing. They even possessed 9th heavenly layer grand primes. With his current strength, it was best if he did not completely offend an archean clan unless he had no other choice. Although he had already heavily injured Dao Gongming and the 2 primordial realm experts of the Tao clan, injuring and killing were 2 completely different concepts. I'll spare you this time. If there's a next time, don't blame me for being merciless. Don't think that I, Jianqin, will fear you just because your Tao clan is an archean clan. You must know that I've already returned the Inata Tower. You should understand what that means, Jianqin said coldly. The 2 primordial realm experts, Ba Bu and Gutong, were just about to say something, but when they heard what Jianqin said at the end, they forcefully swallowed their words. Afterwards, the 2 of them dragged their heavily injured bodies away with Dao Gongming and the 2 female attendants. Sob sob. As they left, Dao Gongming looked back at Jianqin and Shangguan Mu. His eyes were filled with resentment. He wanted to say something, but Gutong covered his mouth firmly. Only when they were far away from the Taoist sect of divine sound did Gutong let go. Why are we leaving? Why are we leaving? Go back. Go back. Go back and kill Jianqin. If I don't kill Jianqin, I swear that I'm not human. We're members of the Tao clan. You're disgracing our Tao clan by fleeing like this. Our Tao clan can't afford to lose face like this. As soon as he recovered the ability to speak, Dao Gongming could not help but bellow out. Killing intent filled his eyes. Young master, calm down. Gutong's expression was ugly as well. As a primordial realm expert of the Tao clan, he was respected wherever he went. No one dared to offend him. Yet he had suffered such a great loss in the Taoist sect of divine sound today, so he was unable to calm down. However, there was nothing he could do. He said sternly, Young master, Jianqin is just too powerful. Even when Ba Bu and I work together, we can't defeat him. Moreover, he has the heavenly palace of Bixing behind him now. His status is completely different from before. If you make a mistake, it might even lead to grievances between our Tao clan and the heavenly palace of Bishing. Are we just going to let it go like this? We're members of the Dao clan. Dao Gongming roared as he coughed up blood. Since it involves the heavenly palace of Bishing, it's not something we can decide. We need to return immediately and report this to the elders so that they can make a decision, Babu said sternly. Chapter 2568. Then once we return, we'll report this to the elders. Since Jianqin dares to offend our Dao clan, we can't spare him, Dao Gongming said resentfully. As the young master of the Dao clan, even though he was not part of the main bloodline, his status was still extremely great. No matter where he went, he would be surrounded by people. It was a grand sight. However, he had suffered such a great loss in the Taoist sect of divine sound today. He struggled to accept this, and there's no need to hide what happened between the prodigy of this generation, Jun Kong, and the female disciples in the Taoist sect of divine sound. Spread the news. Doesn't the Taoist sect of divine sound care about its reputation very much? I want to destroy the Taoist sect of divine sound's reputation, Dao Gongming said through gritted teeth. The humiliation he had suffered in the Taoist sect of divine sound today made him hate the sect as well. Jianqin gradually calmed down in the Taoist sect of divine sound after the people of the Dao clan left. The sharpness in his eyes vanished, replaced by a rare gentleness. Just when he wanted to say something to Shangguan Mu, his face suddenly changed, and he looked in the direction of the Cloud Moon Peak. Even though a female disciple had used an umbrella-shaped treasure to conceal the Cloud Moon Peak, how could a mere medium-quality saint artifact block the senses of Jianqin's soul? As a result, the senses of Jianqin's soul easily penetrated the Cloud Moon Peak, allowing him to clearly see everything that happened there. Jianqin was immediately stunned by this. Surprise filled his face. He could clearly see that in the Yingyue Peak, beside a hot spring that was emitting a faint mist, a young man was engaged in an intense battle with a dozen women. The scene was extremely erotic and beautiful. Jianqin was tongue-tied. He was shocked that such a ridiculous sight had occurred in the Taoist sect of divine sound. Oh no! Deng Wenqin, Lian Qi, and Guna all changed when they sensed the senses of Jianqin's soul. They all knew that things were bad. However, their attention had been completely drawn away by the battle between Jianqin and the primordial realm expert of the Dao clan, so they did not bother to hide what was happening on the Cloud Moon Peak. By the time they returned to their senses, it was already too late. As a result, Jianqin had seen everything clearly. Deng Wenqin and Guna were worried that Jianqin and Shangguan Mu were husband and wife. If Jianqin learned that Jun Kong had secretly tried to harm Shangguan Mu, or in the past, would he become infuriated and start a war? What Lian Qi was worried about was that another person would find out about his disciple scandal, and this person would be the one he disliked the most. Lian Qi's face was rather sunken. When he wanted to bring Jun Kong and Shangguan Mu together, he had already compared his disciple to Jianqin. In reality, he had always believed that the disciple he had personally groomed was more outstanding than Jianqin. However, when he saw Jianqin today, he could not help but admit that Jianqin was indeed a dragon among men. Comparing his disciple to him was like comparing a firefly to the moon. Now that Jianqin had discovered his disciple's scandal, Lian Qi became even more displeased. He immediately snorted gently. A disciple of our Taoist sect of divine sound has encountered some problems with his cultivation, which is why he and his concubines did something so unsightly. I hope Brother Jianqin can keep this a secret. After all, this has to do with the reputation of our Taoist sect of divine sound, said Deng Wenqin. She cast down a barrier with a wave of her hand, enveloping the Cloud Moon Peak. As for the female disciples who stayed behind willingly, she directly referred to them as Jun Kong's concubines. Concubines were basically concubines. Their relationship was equivalent to that of husband and wife, except their status was slightly lower than that of the main wife. If something like that really had happened between husband and wife, it would make sense. After venting, Jun Kong had finally broken free from the effects of the intoxicating filter. He gradually recovered his rationality. Although he had been affected by the intoxicating filter before, where his actions were completely out of his control, acting on instinct, he clearly knew what had happened. His gaze slowly swept over the dozen female disciples below him. Even though these female disciples had the same figure and appearance, he did not have the slightest bit of joy. Instead, his face was gloomy and his gaze was incomparably cold. This was because this was not what he wanted. What he truly wanted was Shangguan Mu, Arg. Jun Kong roared out at the sky. A set of armor appeared from his body, wrapping around his exposed body tightly. He did not even glance at the female disciples and quickly flew away from the Cloud Moon Peak. First senior brother, don't go! First senior brother, where are you going? The feeble voices of a few female disciples rang out from behind him. Jun Kong hovered in the air in his armor within the barrier. He stared at Shangguan Mu, and Jianqin, who seemed like an immortal couple. His eyes were filled with deep resentment. Jun Kong, you actually have the face to show yourself after doing something so absurd. Why don't you back off? Guna called out. Jun Kong was Lian Qi's disciple, while she was Lian Qi's partner. As a result, she still favored Jun Kong. She was afraid that Jianqin would learn about Jun Kong laying his hands on Shangguan Mu. Although this was the first time Guna had seen Jianqin, she already knew a little about his past. Coupled with how merciless Jianqin had been towards the Dao clan today, she had truly seen through Jianqin's personality. However, Jianqin could tell that Guna was trying to hide something from him. The light in his eyes immediately flickered as he sensed that something was off. It seemed like the matter was not as simple as it seemed on the surface. Mu, did Jun Kong use any underhanded methods against you? After a moment of thought, Jianqin looked at Shangguan Mu. He had known about Jun Kong since a long time ago. He had actually done something so despicable with over a dozen female disciples in broad daylight. There was something fishy about this in the first place. Coupled with his resentful gaze, Jianqin immediately thought of many things and became suspicious. Jun Kong obtained an intoxicating aphrodisiac pill from somewhere. He originally wanted to use it against me, but he failed. Shangguan Mu, I was completely disappointed in the Taoist sect of divine sound. She did not hide the truth, telling Jianqin everything. She even explained the effects of the intoxicating aphrodisiac pill in detail to him. Chapter 2569. Shangguan Mu was his beloved wife, yet now someone dared to openly lay their hands on her and even resorted to such despicable methods. This made Jianqin extremely furious. In this world, as long as one was an outstanding man or woman, they would have countless suitors, especially a beauty like Shangguan Mu. Naturally, there were many suitors and admirers behind her. If Jun Kong had openly pursued Shangguan Mu, Jianqin would not have become so furious. However, he just happened to use despicable methods, even using the intoxicating aphrodisiac pill. This immediately roused Jianqin's killing intent. Jun Kong's actions had crossed the bottom line of Jianqin's tolerance. Seniors, Jun Kong has done something so despicable. Do you still want to protect him? Jianqin asked sternly. His presence was pressing as killing intent surged. His gaze became extremely piercing. Even when he faced 3 chaotic primes, he showed no fear or cowardice. He seemed like he would not give up until he gave an explanation. This is an internal matter of our Taoist sect of divine sound. How we deal with it is an internal matter of our sect. It has nothing to do with outsiders. Lian Qi replied coldly. He had shut Jianqin out by referring to him as an outsider. What he was implying was that Jianqin was an outsider. He did not have the right to interfere with the internal matters of the Taoist sect of divine sound. Mu is my wife. Since this matter concerns my wife, I need to get involved, Jianqin said coldly and firmly. He did not back down at all. Lien Qi snorted coldly, and the pressure of a chaotic prime radiated from him. His white robes ruffled without any wind. Even though he gave off a pressuring presence, he said coldly, "May I ask how you plan on dealing with it?" Jianqin refused to back down in front of Lien Qi's forcefulness. Powerful sword intent revolved around him. At that moment, his gaze became extremely piercing. His eyes seemed to be filled with endless sword intent. His eyes met Lien Qi's, causing Lien Qi's pupils to shrink slightly. Facing Jianqin's gaze, Lien Qi felt a faint stinging pain in his eyes. He was immediately shocked. Jianqin's sword essence is so strong. This lad's comprehension of the sword Dao has really reached the peak. He is even more powerful than many sword Dao experts at the same level as him. Hand over Junkong, or I'll never let this go, Jianqin said coldly. He glared at Lien Qi and continued, "For Mu'er's sake, I don't want to fall out with your Taoist sect of divine sound. However, if you insist on protecting Junkong, then don't blame me. You can't protect Junkong even if you want to, even if your Taoist sect of divine sound has 4 chaotic primes." Hearing this, Deng Wenqin, Gu Na, and Lien Qi's expressions changed. Deng Wenqin and Gu Na's expressions became grave, while Lien Qi's eyes flashed with a sharp glint. Soon after, a monstrous fury rose from the bottom of his heart. Originally, this was only a grievance between us and Junkong. I didn't want it to become a grievance between us and your Taoist sect of divine sound. However, if you force me to call my seniors from the Martial Soul Mountain over, it won't be so easy to deal with, Jianqin continued. He was no longer alone in the saint's world. No matter what happened, he would be the only one keeping an eye on things. This was because he had already become the 8th successor of the Martial Soul lineage. He basically had someone to rely on. Moreover, with the Martial Soul lineage's current strength, there was no need for them to fear peak organizations that possessed regular grand primes in the saint's world. This was because Han Zong, Chu Jian, and Yu Chao all possessed the battle prowess of grand primes. In particular, Han Zong was the strongest among the 3 of them. This organization was enough to make many peak organizations fear them in the saint's world. As expected, Deng Wenqin, Gu Na, and Lien Qi were all surprised when they heard about the Martial Soul Mountain. Fear appeared on their faces. The Martial Soul lineage was not the most powerful in the saint's world, but they were definitely the most difficult to deal with. This was because they had the Martial Soul Mountain. Through the wondrous Martial Soul Mountain, the Martial Soul lineage could instantly reach any place in the saint's world. Distance truly did not matter before the Martial Soul lineage in the vast saint's world. This was something that none of the grand primes in the saint's world could achieve. This was because even 9th heavenly layer grand primes needed some time to cross the distance between planes. Crossing the entire saint's world would take even longer. Only the supreme grand exalts, who were like the embodiment of the laws of the world, could achieve this. They also knew that if Jianqin summoned the Martial Soul lineage right now, the colossal figure of the Martial Soul Mountain would appear in outer space on the Skyfar plane in less than half a minute. The Martial Soul lineage was still extremely intimidating to the Taoist sect of divine sound. "Master, mistress, ancestor, let me out." At this moment, Junkong's voice rang out from the barrier. The barrier could cut off the senses of the soul, but it did not cut off Junkong's voice. Junkong locked onto Jianqin and called out, "Jianqin, are you bold enough to fight me?" Junkong had no idea about Jianqin's true strength, nor did he know that Jianqin had already become a primordial realm expert. His understanding of Jianqin remained at the level of the Divine King. He only knew that Jianqin was a rather powerful Divine King. He himself was also a Divine King, and he had comprehended one of the 3 concepts created by the 3rd ancestor, the heart of life and death. His strength had reached a whole new level. He was completely capable of making it into the top 10 of the Divine King. He was confident that he was definitely more powerful than Jianqin with his current strength. What happened on the Cloud Moon Peak had humiliated him. Now he wanted to vent this on Jianqin. Let's just let Jianqin fight Jun Kong and settle this grievance. At this moment, an ethereal voice reverberated through the heavens and the earth. It carried an indisputable dignity. This voice didn't sound old, and it was very pleasant to the ears. Wind Ancestor, Dang Wenxin, Guna, and Lian Qi were all shocked when they heard this voice. A sliver of shock appeared on their faces, as if they could not believe that the Wind Ancestor would give such an unbelievable order. They had personally witnessed Jianqin's strength. Even Babu, a fourth heavenly layer infinite prime, could not fight back at all, yet now she wanted Jun Kong, a divine king, to fight against Jianqin. That was just too absurd. Sigh. Dang Wenxin sighed gently. Her barrier still enveloped the Cloud Moon Peak, but with a wave of her hand, she pulled Jun Kong out of the barrier. The Wind Ancestor was a supreme figure in the Taoist sect of divine sound. No one dared to defy her. Since she had spoken, they could only carry it out. Guna and Lian Qi became gloomy as well. The Wind Ancestor's orders had expressed her attitude. She had given up on Jun Kong. Chapter 2570. Jianqin, are you bold enough to fight me? Jun Kong called out. With that, a powerful presence erupted from his body, enveloping Jianqin like it was blotting out the surroundings. At that moment, Jun Kong was brimming with battle intent. He was filled with confidence, as if victory was within his grasp. After all, he had comprehended the heart of life and death. Although his current strength was not as great as Shangguan Mu, who possessed the zither of the demonic cry, he could definitely make it into the top 10 of the Divine King's throne. As a matter of fact, Jun Kong was confident that he could make it into the top 3 of the Divine King's throne and contend with the first of the Divine King's thrones. This was because he had basically obtained a small portion of the third ancestor's legacy. Most of the people who had reached the top of the Divine King's throne had only obtained the legacies of regular Grand Primes. Some of them did not even possess the legacies of Grand Primes. Legacies like that were naturally nowhere close to 10 or 20% of the third ancestors. The Wind Ancestor, who basically never interferes with the matters of the sect, has actually agreed to my battle against Jianqin. It looks like Jianqin's strength really isn't anything special, or the Wind Ancestor would never let me fight against Jianqin, thought Jun Kong. He still believed that the Wind Ancestor stood on his side. But that makes sense. Mu is the third ancestor's successor after all. She's just far too important to our Taoist sect of divine sound. The Wind Ancestor probably doesn't want Jianqin to continue existing, just in case he affects Mu in the future. The reason why she wants me to fight against Jianqin is probably because she wants to use me to eliminate Jianqin. Jun Kong sneered inside when he thought up to there. He thought, Mu, weren't you obsessed with Jianqin in the past? Weren't you very hopeful about Jianqin? You even said time and time again that I was nowhere near as good as Jianqin. I'll show you just how useless the Jianqin in your heart is in my hands. Haha, you boast shamelessly. Jun Kong, since you want to fight, I'll fight with you. Jianqin looked at Jun Kong mockingly. Jun Kong was only a divine king, so he had no idea where he got his confidence from. Dang Wenxin and Guna were also looking at Jun Kong strangely. In their eyes, Jun Kong used to be a smart and intelligent person. Why was he so stupid now? Could this be the after effects of the intoxicating filter? Jun Kong has already shaken off the pill poison, but he hasn't completely regained his rationality. At this moment, Dang Wenxin and Guna couldn't help but ask themselves. This was the only explanation they could come up with. Lian Qi looked at Jun Kong with mixed feelings. There was deep disappointment in his eyes. He wanted to warn Jun Kong, but when he opened his mouth, he only sighed gently in the end. He said nothing. It's rumored that Jianqin is a vicious person. He killed many people in Poseidon Palace, and he even led to the pursuit of the heavenly king of azure brilliance and the solitary sword ancestor. Now that the wind ancestor wants Jun Kong to fight against Jianqin. With Jianqin's personality, he probably won't hold back. The wind ancestor is clearly sacrificing Jun Kong, thought Lian Qi. He felt powerless before the wind ancestor's orders. However, I just don't understand why the wind ancestor is sacrificing Jun Kong. After all, Jun Kong has comprehended the third ancestor's supreme concept, the heart of life and death. His future is limitless. Sacrificing such an outstanding talent just to resolve Jianqin's anger? Just what is Jianqin capable of to make our Taoist sect of divine sound make such a great sacrifice over such a small matter? Just because he's a member of the martial soul lineage? Just because he returned the Anita Tower and established a relationship with the heavenly palace of Bixing? Lian Qi felt extremely resentful. In his opinion, even if Jun Kong was in the wrong, he would not be punished to this extent. Jun Kong can't die. Suddenly, Lian Qi made up his mind and secretly made up his mind. Mu! You can't interfere in this battle. Jun Kong suddenly said to Mu. Jun Kong suddenly said to Shangguan Mu. From his expression, he seemed to be afraid that Shangguan Mu would suddenly save Jianqin. Shangguan Mu was clearly stunned by that. She glanced at Jianqin and said strangely, "All right, I won't interfere." Jun Kong made up his mind when he heard that. With a flip of his hand, a jade flute appeared in his hand. Immediately, the pleasant sound of the flute rang out. The sound of the flute was pleasing to the ear. The soft sound could penetrate metal and crack stone, and it seemed to be able to reach into the depths of one's soul. It could control one's life potential, causing the ripples of one's soul, the beating of one's heart, and the flow of one's blood to form a resonance with the flute. It was as if he could directly control all of his opponent's vitality through the melody. This was one of the three supreme realms of cultivation of the third ancestor, the heart of life and death. He could control the life and death of his opponent through music. It was different from the two tunes of the demonic and divine. The demonic tune of the two tunes of the demonic and divine directly targeted the soul, while the heart of life and death controlled the vitality of his opponent. Jun Kong used his full strength right from the start. He wanted to crush Jianqin in an extremely forceful manner or even directly kill him. With my late divine king cultivation, I can already effect a few first heavenly layer infinite primes when I use the heart of life and death. I wonder how long Jianqin can last, thought Jun Kong. He was extremely confident in his current strength, so he did not consider the possibility of failure at all. You're quite good at playing the flute. Jianqin was in no hurry to attack. He stared at Jun Kong like he was looking at a clown. He remained composed as if he was not affected at all. Jun Kong's melody did possess a certain level of lethality, but it was only enough to deal with first heavenly layer infinite primes at most. The difference between them was just too great. They were on completely different levels. Moreover, Jianqin's soul had fused with a strand of true chaotic force, so it had undergone a metamorphosis. It was already extremely powerful, so Jun Kong's melody became pure music to Jianqin's ears. Jun Kong's face changed slightly when he sensed Jianqin's composure. He's actually not affected at all. No, that's impossible. Jun Kong was unable to accept this reality. In the next moment, the rhythm of his flute became hurried. The heart of life and death was fully activated, causing his flute to seem to possess some sort of power from the laws of the world. The two completely different intents of life and death intertwined, causing the power of his flute to multiply immediately. Jun Kong, is that all you're capable of? You're bold enough to say that you want to fight me with just that? You don't even have the power to harm me with your strength. I really do wonder where your confidence comes from, Jianqin said coldly. His voice was filled with deep disdain. Jun Kong had used underhanded methods against Shangguan Mu. Jianqin would never let someone as despicable as him die a quick death. P.S. Recently, many readers have been complaining about not being able to see the new chapters, no matter how many times they open the webpage. It's very difficult to wait for the new chapters. In reality, whenever Xiaoyao released a new chapter, he would notify them on his official account. Moreover, there would be a link to the original chapter on his WeChat account. Moreover, there are some readers who follow the chaotic sword god on other platforms. In the end, some platforms would not keep up with the updates for weeks to weeks. Other readers would see the new chapters every day, but some readers would still be stuck at the chapters from weeks to weeks ago. As a result, in order to let you know about the updates as soon as possible, please follow Xiaoyao's official account on WeChat, XingXingCiao110. This was the pseudonym of Xinqing Xiaoyao. There was also a number for the police, or you could find it by searching for Xinqing Xiaoyao on his official account. Chapter 2571. Jun Kong's fury had almost reached its limit when he heard Jianqin's mockery. His eyes were cold, and his expression became extremely ugly. He felt like his face was burning hot. He had nowhere to hide his face. He had declared that he wanted to challenge Jianqin. Due to his comprehension of the heart of life and death, his confidence had swelled. He was extremely confident, and he even wanted to trample on Jianqin viciously in front of Shangguan Mu. He wanted her to see just how useless the Jianqin that she could not forget was, and just how great the difference between them was. As a matter of fact, he was already prepared to kill Jianqin, as the supreme wind ancestor of the Taoist sect of divine sound had just spoken, allowing him to fight Jianqin. Originally, he thought that the wind ancestor had allowed him to take part because she was confident in his victory, which made Jun Kong even more confident. However, he had never thought that the final outcome would be such an awkward one. It was the complete opposite of what he had imagined. Jianqin, who he had always viewed as a thorn in his side, just stood there leisurely with his arms crossed. He did not use any treasures, nor did he put up any defenses. However, the way of music that he was so proud of could not affect Jianqin at all. Moreover, he had already used his full strength. He had pushed the concept of the heart of life and death to the limit. Without any exaggeration, his strength had reached an extraordinary level, but he just could not harm Jianqin. It was as if Jianqin was completely immune to his musical attacks. No, this is impossible. This is impossible. How can this be? How can this be? Jun Kong was unable to remain composed anymore. His eyes had become scarlet red. He was unable to accept this reality. Jun Kong, you better use your full strength. It's nowhere near enough to harm me with a musical attack like this. Jianqin hovered at the peak of the mountain range with his arms crossed. Faint mist would drift past him from time to time, obscuring his figure and making him seem unfathomable. Jun Kong's face was ashen. He did not stop playing his flute, but he gritted his teeth. He felt extremely humiliated. After comprehending the heart of life and death, his greatest skill was the conception of the heart of life and death. The power of this conception was far beyond the secret techniques that he had mastered. Now his heart of life and death had been fully activated. He had already brought out his strongest strength. Jianqin had asked him to use his full strength, but he had already used his full strength. Deng Wenqin, Guna, and Lian Qi watched the scene in silence. Their faces were filled with complicated emotions. Jun Kong's strength was indeed extraordinary. Just the sound of the flute was enough to affect first heavenly layer infinite primes. Being able to achieve this as a divine king was extremely impressive. Even across the entire saints' world, such people were extremely rare. Unfortunately, he was not facing a first heavenly layer infinite prime. Instead, he faced a fourth heavenly layer infinite prime who could easily defeat fourth heavenly layer infinite primes. Deng Wenqin, Guna, and Guna all felt pity for Jun Kong. "It looks like this is all you've got," said Jianqin. He shook his head gently and looked at Jun Kong like he was looking at an ant. he said. "You're far too weak, so weak that I can't even muster up the desire to attack you. My servants can easily slaughter you 1,000 times over. However, you should never have used such underhanded methods against Mu-Er. Since you've done it, you need to bear the consequences." With that, Jianqin appeared before Jun Kong like he had teleported. He directly threw a punch at Jun Kong. The punch was extremely simple. He did not use any power of laws, only his physical strength. However, with the strength of Jianqin's chaotic body, even his physical strength was extremely shocking. He had also reached the level of an infinite prime. Bang! His punch was unstoppable. Before the punch had even arrived, the terrifying pressure within it had already made Jun Kong's expression change. However, it was impossible for Jun Kong to dodge Jianqin's punch with his strength. The punch landed on the jade flute in Jun Kong's hand first. The jade flute immediately cracked, shattered by Jianqin's punch. The fragments shot out, piercing Jun Kong's hand and chest. However, Jianqin's punch did not slow down at all. It continued forward, landing on Jun Kong's nose viciously. Blood immediately spurted out. Jun Kong's nose had been broken, and it had completely caved in. A fist-sized hole appeared on his face, making him seem extremely vicious and shocking. Jun Kong was blown away by Jianqin's punch. He struck the barrier behind him heavily before bouncing back. At this moment, he only felt like he was seeing stars as the world spun around him. Jianqin's punch was just too powerful. It landed on his nose, causing his soul to shake up violently. If you were just an honorable, I wouldn't have anything to say, but you just had to resort to underhanded methods. You can't be spared, Jianqin said coldly. His voice boomed in Jun Kong's ears like thunder. Afterwards, he arrived before Jun Kong with a flash. This time he did not use a punch. Instead, he swung his hand and sent Jun Kong flying. His palm was shockingly powerful. With a paw sound, half of Jun Kong's face was smashed up. His flesh was reduced to a bloody mess, and all of his teeth were broken. Jun Kong was furious. He glared at Jianqin viciously, as if he was about to spit fire. He opened his mouth, but he was unable to say anything. Jianqin's slap had even rendered him speechless. He could not control his jaw at all. Afterwards, Jianqin struck out again and again, using his fists and feet to trample on Jun Kong viciously. He sent Jun Kong flying through the air like a ball. He controlled his strength perfectly, only injuring but not killing Jun Kong. Otherwise, with his current strength, he only needed to flick his finger to wipe out Jun Kong's soul. Jun Kong's actions infuriated Jianqin. He did not want Jun Kong to die so easily. Dang Wenqin and Guna watched from one side as Jun Kong was ravaged beyond recognition. They could not help but feel pity for him. There was also a sliver of anger on their faces. This was anger directed towards Jianqin. Jun Kong was a prodigy of the Taoist sect of divine sound. Yet Jianqin treated Jun Kong like that right in front of them. This made them feel rather embarrassed. As for Lian Qi, a vicious light shone in his eyes. He clenched and unclenched his fists at times as his emotions fluctuated. He stared fixedly at Jianqin, paying attention to Jun Kong's vital signs at all times. Shangguan Mu remained cold. She looked at Jun Kong's miserable appearance and did not express her opinion at all. Shangguan Mu was known as the heavenly enchantress on the Tianyuan continent. She was not a merciful person, and she was also a decisive person. Jun Kong had used the intoxicating aphrodisiac pill on her, which had also aroused her killing intent. However, she did not do anything out of consideration for the kindness the Taoist sect of divine sound had shown her. Now that she saw Jianqin teach Jun Kong a lesson, she naturally would not plead for mercy. Chapter 2572. Bang! With a muffled sound, Jianqin landed a kick on Jun Kong's chest, breaking all his ribs. A terrifying force invaded Jun Kong's body, shattering his heart. Jun Kong's body rapidly fell from the sky from the kick, smashing heavily into a mountain below. He left behind a huge crater. An entire mountain trembled slightly. Jun Kong could no longer make any sounds at all. His life force was extremely weak. Under Jianshin's barrage of attacks, his body had basically been reduced to mush. He was covered in blood outside, and many parts of his body had been reduced to a bloody mess. Internally, his organs and meridians had either been pulverized or completely severed. His current fate was extremely miserable. His injuries were so severe that it was not an exaggeration to say that he was on the brink of death. If it were not for the fact that he was a great expert at the Divine King realm and that his soul was still intact, he probably would have died long ago from such heavy injuries. However, even with that being the case, his hellish torture did not end. Jianshin arrived on the mountain and stood at the edge of the crater created by Jun Kong's body. He lifted Jun Kong up like a pile of mush and slapped him across the face again. With a crisp sound, Jun Kong was sent flying again. His face was also reduced to a bloody mess, where his facial features were completely unrecognizable. This was because one of his eyes had been smashed and his nose had vanished. There was a fist-sized crater in the center of his face. His mouth had been smashed apart as well, making it completely unrecognizable. If there were ghosts in the world, then Jun Kong's current appearance was just like one. He was vicious and terrifying. A few cowardly people would break out in cold sweat just by looking at him. He was just too miserable. He had been treated as a punching bag by Jianshin. Although Jun Kong is in the wrong, he's still your senior brother after all. Are you just going to watch him suffer like this? Lian Qi asked secretly. He was extremely furious about Jun Kong's fate, and his face was extremely sunken. He really wanted to save Jun Kong. He wanted to teach Jianshin a vicious lesson. But when he thought about the martial soul lineage behind Jianshin, he became worried, even though he was a chaotic prime. However, the strength of the martial soul lineage still filled him with fear. This was because even the Taoist sect of Divine Sound could not stop the martial soul lineage, let alone the fact that his cultivation was nowhere near as great as the Wind Ancestors. Now he could only place his hopes on Shangguan Mu. He hoped that Shangguan Mu would speak up for Jun Kong for the sake of their relationship as fellow disciples. He's no longer my senior brother. He brought this upon himself. He can't blame anyone else, Shangguan Mu said coldly. She did not give Lian Qi any respect at all. This was because she had already begun to suspect whether the intoxicating aphrodisiac pill in Jun Kong's possession came from Lian Qi. If this continues, Jun Kong will probably be beaten to death by Jianshin. His soul has already been injured. He won't be able to last much longer, Guna said to Mu, through voice transmission. Guna also communicated with Shangguan Mu, secretly. She had basically watched Jun Kong grow up, and he was the disciple of her partner, Lian Qi. She could not bear to see Jun Kong suffer such abuse. What does Jun Kong's life have to do with me? If it weren't for the fact that this is the Taoist sect of Divine Sound, I would have killed him for what he did to me earlier. Shangguan Mu's eyes were extremely cold as heavy killing intent filled her voice. Dang Wenxin said nothing. She understood what the Wind Ancestor meant. Even if Jianshin did not have the martial soul lineage behind him, she still had to give up on Jun Kong. Because of Jun Kong, Shangguan Mu had gone as far as to leave the Taoist sect of Divine Sound. It was also because of Jun Kong that Shangguan Mu had given up on the Taoist sect of Divine Sound. Shangguan Mu's importance to the Taoist sect of Divine Sound went without saying. Since she resented Jun Kong so much, if the Taoist sect of Divine Sound continued to protect Jun Kong, it would only cause the distance between them to widen. No one wanted to see that happen. As a result, in Dang Wenxin's opinion, even if Shangguan Mu wanted to leave the Taoist sect of Divine Sound, she could not allow her to resent the Taoist sect of divine sound at all. The wind ancestor is truly wise. Mu has already attracted the attention of Archean clans. If she continues to stay in the Taoist sect of divine sound, it'll be very difficult for us to protect her. Her temporary departure might not be a bad thing. After all, her husband is Jianqin, and Jianqin has returned the Inata Tower, which is a great merit to the heavenly palace of Bixing. Borrowing the might of the heavenly palace of Bixing will only be beneficial to Mu. At that moment, Dang Wenxin seemed to understand something deeper. Suddenly, there was a resplendent flash of light. Afterwards, blood rained down from the sky. Jun Kong's arms had already been severed by Jianqin's sword qi. Blood spurted out from the severed arms as they fell from the sky. Lian Qi had already clenched his fists. He looked at Jun Kong, who had lost his arms, as his body trembled gently. His eyes were about to spit fire. "It's time to send you on your way." Jianqin stared at the dying Jun Kong emotionlessly in the sky. Killing intent shone from his eyes as he extended a finger towards Jun Kong's forehead. With that, sword qi shone brightly. A silver-white streak shot through the sky, approaching Jun Kong with lightning speed. Jianqin had lost interest after tormenting Jun Kong for so long. He directly attacked, wanting to end Jun Kong's life completely. Enough! However, at this moment, a furious bellow rang out. Lian Qi finally could not help but step forward when Jun Kong was on the brink of death. He appeared before Jun Kong like he had teleported. With a casual wave of his hand, the powerful presence of a chaotic prime erupted, crushing Jianqin's sword qi to pieces with a single palm strike. Lian Qi hovered in the air as he controlled the energy of the world to envelop Jun Kong's remains. He stared at Jianqin coldly and said, "Jianqin, don't push your luck." Jun Kong was his disciple, and he was the one who had given Jun Kong the intoxicating aphrodisiac pill. As a result, Lian Qi would never allow Jun Kong to die before him. Dang Wenxin and Guna's expressions changed slightly when they saw this, while Shangwan Mu's eyes shone with coldness. "You want to protect him?" Jianqin stared at Lian Qi coldly. "You've already injured Jun Kong to such a state. He's paid for his mistakes, so you should stop," Lian Qi said with a sunken face. Jianqin shook his head. "Who said he's paid for his mistakes? As long as he's alive, he won't pay for his mistakes." "In other words, you're determined to kill Jun Kong?" Lian Qi's gaze gradually turned cold. He said frigidly, "Jun Kong is my direct disciple. It's fine if you want to teach him a lesson, but I won't allow you to kill him." Chapter 2573. Jianqin, don't go too far. Even if Jun Kong is in the wrong, he doesn't deserve to die. Moreover, you've already beaten him into such a state. You should be satisfied. If you continue to push your luck, it won't bring you any benefits. You need to know when to advance and when to retreat. Only then can you live in peace in the saint's world, said Lian Qi in hopes of persuading Jianqin to stop. After all, Jianqin's identity was different now. He had the support of the martial soul lineage. Unless he had no other choice, he really did not want to clash with Jianqin. "Are you threatening me?" Jianqin's presence suddenly changed. Powerful sword qi radiated from him, and with a flip of his hand, the 9-star sword of heavenly ways appeared in his hand. It shone with enchanting starlight. "If you insist on protecting Jun Kong, don't blame me for not showing you any mercy," Jianqin said coldly. He directly expressed his stance with his actions. "Lian Qi," Guna called out gently from the other side. She was also worried that the martial soul lineage would be forced over once the matter escalated. If it was just Jianqin alone, it would only be a small matter no matter what he did in the Taoist sect of divine sound. He would not be able to involve the upper echelon of the sect. However, once the martial soul lineage descended, the matter would truly escalate. "I raised Jun Kong single-handedly. I've poured far too much effort into him. How can I just watch him be harmed by a lunatic? Lien Qi snorted coldly. His voice was firm, which also expressed his stance. Mu-er. Guna looked at Shangguan Mu-er again. She hoped that Shangguan Mu-er could stop this from happening and prevent it from escalating. Shangguan Mu-er declined politely. Her stance was the same as Jianqin's. No matter what Jianqin did, she would always stand on Jianqin's side. She would not plead for Jun Kong. All of a sudden, a burst of powerful sword will burst out. The formless sword will fill the space, vast and endless. It seemed to have turned the space into a domain of sword qi. Jianqin struck out. He dared not hold back at all against a chaotic prime. He used his full strength right from the start, directly using the ultimate way of the sword. He used his will to control a region of space, becoming the ruler there. The life and death of everything was under his control. What a powerful sword intent! What kind of sword Dao did he comprehend? Why is it so powerful? Lien Qi, Guna, and Dang Wenqin shuddered as they were once again amazed by Jianqin's sword Dao. This was because they could clearly sense that the power of the way of the sword Jianqin was much more powerful than when he fought Babu and Gutong. Indeed, Jianqin had not used his full strength when fighting Babu and Gutong. He had only displayed a portion of his strength. However, it was different now. He could only use his full strength against a chaotic prime. His eyes shone with bright, white light like two stars. They shone with dazzling light, and with a thought, space immediately rippled as a terrifying pulse swept towards Jun Kong. This was an ability he obtained from comprehending the ultimate way of the sword. As long as his sword intent enveloped an area of space, he could kill anyone below the primordial realm with a single thought. Of course, he knew that Lien Qi would definitely protect Jun Kong, so he struck out as well when he launched the attack with his mind. Dazzling stars appeared on the 9-star sword of heavenly ways one after another. Whenever a star appeared, the power of the 9-star sword of heavenly ways would increase. In just a single moment, 9 illusionary stars appeared. They fused with the sword, as if they had fused with the god artifact. They shone with hazy starlight as they suddenly stabbed towards Lien Qi. Jianqin had already pushed the power of the 9-star sword of heavenly ways to the limit. As he stabbed out, endless starlight drowned him out. From afar, it seemed like 9 stars had lined up, piercing through space as shocking sword qi and ripping it apart. Lien Qi's face sank. He grabbed Jun Kong with his left hand, and the surging energy of a chaotic prime erupted, forming an extremely tough shield of energy that protected Jun Kong. The power of laws also transformed into pulsing musical notes, forming 2 layers of defense. Jianqin's power from the ultimate way of the sword was immediately isolated. Under the protection of a chaotic prime, he was unable to use his ability to rule with a single thought. Jianqin, I must admit that you're extraordinary. However, you're still an infinite prime in the end. There's an entire major realm of cultivation between infinite primes and chaotic primes. If I want to protect Jun Kong, you won't be able to harm him at all, Lien Qi said coldly. Dense energy surged out from his right hand, conjuring a huge hand that grabbed the 9-star sword of heavenly ways. Thrum! Trapped, the 9-star sword of heavenly ways immediately produced a clear thrum, as if the sword spirit was roaring furiously. Afterwards, the starlight on the 9-star sword of heavenly ways became dazzling. The 9 illusionary stars became more and more real as they resisted with all their might. At the same time, the chaotic force within Jianqin surged as well. Destructive chaotic force surged out from his naiden, filling every inch of his flesh and cells. He had pushed the power of the chaotic body to the limit. Moreover, he used the laws of strength. His arm that gripped the 9-star sword of heavenly ways suddenly swelled. An explosive power was contained within. He gripped the 9-star sword of heavenly ways tightly and swung it. Whoosh! With the sound of slashing energy, A crack appeared in the hand that Jianqin had condensed from Lian Qi's surging energy. The 9-star sword of heavenly ways broke free with starlight, and under Jianqin's swing, it slashed towards Lian Qi from above. The powerful sword Qi seemed to have turned into a silver river, enveloping Lian Qi with blinding light. So powerful, his strike has completely reached the level of a 7th heavenly layer infinite prime. It's even close to the 8th heavenly layer. Dang Wenqin and Gu Na, who watched Jianqin from one side, were unsettled. They had already overestimated Jianqin, but only now did they discover that their understanding of Jianqin was nowhere near enough. He was actually so powerful. Just how many years had he cultivated for? Jianqin, what you're doing is pointless. The difference between infinite primes and chaotic primes is just too great. Even if you're extraordinary, you're just wasting your strength. Lian Qi remained calm. A jade flute also appeared in his right hand. He gently waved the flute and let out a shrill sound. The sound was a sound wave attack. It formed a faint ripple that nullified Jianqin's river of sword qi. Afterwards, he placed the jade flute beside his mouth and began to play it gently. Lian Qi was one of the 4 ancestors of the Taoist sect of divine sound. Direct attacks were not his forte. His strongest technique was music. The whistle could pierce through metal and rock. Nothing could stop it. It could pierce through all barriers and reach the heart. Jianqin immediately felt his head become heavy when he heard the sound of the flute. At that moment, he felt like all of his energy had been drained away. He became drowsy as his body gradually became limp and powerless. Lian Qi's way of music was incomparable to Jun Kong's. Even though he had not comprehended the heart of life and death, his attacks with music as a chaotic prime were like the demonic sounds of death to all infinite primes. However, at this moment, the faint sound of a zither rang out. Shangguan Mu, or sat in the air. She took out the zither of the demonic cry and began to play it as well. Her zither specially targeted Lian Qi's flute. The zither and flute constantly collided. The zither was destroyed, while the flute's power plummeted. With Shangguan Mu'er's cultivation as a divine king, she did not possess the power to weaken Lian Qi's flute. However, she had comprehended the heart of the demonic and divine, and she used the zither of the demonic cry that the 3rd ancestor had left behind. As a result, she possessed the power to block Lian Qi's flute slightly. Chapter 2574. With Shangguan Mu, or weakening the power of Lian Qi's flute, the effects on Jianqin immediately decreased drastically. However, this was only temporary. Lian Qi was a chaotic prime after all, so the power of his flute was extremely great. Even after being weakened, it only gave Jianqin some time to catch his breath. As time went on, Jianqin could not help but feel dizzy, and he would fall asleep. Jianqin understood this as well. He did not stop at all, striking out with his full strength. Sword Qi surged from him, and the 9-star sword of heavenly ways conjured 9 huge stars. He launched a vicious attack with an unstoppable force. However, his attack only had the power of a 7th heavenly layer infinite prime. It was equivalent to the 8th heavenly layer at most. Before Lian Qi, who had been a chaotic prime for many years, it was still nothing. Lian Qi's body was as still as a mountain. He floated in the air and gently blew the jade flute. The sound of the jade flute suddenly became a little sharp. As the sharp sound rang out, a visible sound wave suddenly shot out like a sword, colliding with Jianqin's 9-star sword of heavenly ways. With a boom, Jianqin's attack was easily nullified again. A chaotic prime and an infinite prime were on completely different levels. The difference was just too great. It was impossible to make up for it. However, this time, Jianqin sneered the moment they came in contact. His eyes immediately became extremely shocking as heavy killing intent surged out. A finger-sized, silver-white sword Qi appeared silently above his head. The moment the sword Qi appeared, a supreme sword intent immediately permeated the surroundings. The sword chi was so powerful that it was enough to shake up the surroundings, causing the expressions of Lian Qi, Dang Wenqin, and Guna to change slightly. Lian Qi's eyes narrowed as he fought against Jianqin. His indifferent expression immediately became stern. This was because he felt a strong sense of threat from the sword chi. The tiny sword chi definitely had the power to harm him. Not good. Lian Qi said in his heart. His vigilance increased greatly. It was also at this moment that the finger-sized sword chi suddenly erupted with incomparable speed. It seemed to pierce through space, breaking through the limits of space and disappearing in a flash. It was so fast that even Lian Qi was shocked. However, the sword chi did not shoot towards Lian Qi. Instead, it shot towards Jun Kong, who had been protected by him the entire time. In a single instance, the sword chi arrived before Jun Kong's face. It moved just too quickly. Lian Qi wanted to stop it, but he was unable to. A layer of powerful energy and laws of music revolved around Jun Kong, protecting him. However, the strand of sword chi directly ignored these defenses. It pierced through space and directly shot into Jun Kong's head. Bang! With a muffled sound, Jun Kong's head immediately exploded. His entire head vanished, turning into a headless corpse. His soul had been reduced to ashes immediately. Jun Kong was dead. The profound sword chi was just too powerful. Now that Jianqin had condensed 4 strands of profound sword chi, every single one of them was even more powerful than before. Some weaker infinite primes could be directly slain, so it was impossible for Jun Kong, who was just a divine king, to keep his head intact after enduring a single strand of profound sword chi. He died without a complete corpse. The sudden development shocked Dang Wenqin, Guna, and Lian Qi. They stared at Jun Kong's corpse blankly. They were stunned. They struggled to accept this. Jianqin was actually under the protection of a chaotic prime and managed to kill Jun Kong. He had successfully killed Jun Kong. His ability and methods had left them deeply shocked. Kong, A while later, Lian Qi called out sorrowfully. He was extremely sorrowful. Jun Kong was a prodigy he had personally nurtured. First, he made it to the God King's throne and became a supreme God King. Afterwards, he comprehended the heart of life and death from the third ancestor's 3 great intents. He had once been Lian Qi's pride, and he held great hopes for Jun Kong. Now he had actually watched as Jun Kong died before him. He struggled to accept this, but very soon, a surging presence radiated from Lian Qi. Jun Kong's death made him furious. Heavy killing intent rose up from the bottom of his heart. Jianqin. Lian Qi stared at Jianqin firmly. His eyes were filled with hatred as he did not hide his killing intent at all. Jianqin sheathed his sword and stood there. He stared at Lian Qi with a similar glare. He showed no fear and said coldly, from the moment he used the intoxicating filter on Mu, he was fated to end up like this. Jun Kong brought all of this on himself. Or in other words, it's your fault as his master. Jianqin secretly raised his guard. He was prepared to contact the Martial Soul Mountain at any time. When he left the Martial Soul Mountain, he had learnt the corresponding secret technique. All he needed was a thought, and he could send a distress signal to the Martial Soul Mountain. In just a few seconds, the people of the Martial Soul lineage would arrive. It was exactly because of the Martial Soul Mountain support that Jianqin was bold enough to act so fearlessly in the Taoist sect of Divine Sound. He did not fear chaotic primes at all, even killing them right in front of them. Lian Qi said nothing. At that moment, he was basically an enraged beast, teetering on the brink of losing his mind. He stared at Jianqin like a wolf as killing intent surged from him. A terrifying presence permeated the surroundings. Jun Kong is dead, and you vented your anger. Jianqin, are you satisfied now? At this moment, an obscure voice rang out. With that, a beautiful woman appeared silently before Jianqin. The woman seemed to be in her 30s, but her beauty was still stunning. Her bearing was otherworldly, and she radiated with youthful vigor. Wind Ancestor, Dang Wenqin, and Guna immediately clasped their fists and bowed when they saw the woman. Even Lian Qi held back his presence slightly, behaving like a junior. The Wind Ancestor was definitely a supreme figure in the Taoist sect of divine sound. Not only was she extremely powerful, being the greatest expert of the sect, but she was also someone from the same generation as the third ancestor. Moreover, she was the third ancestor's senior sister in the past. Her status was shockingly great. The Wind Ancestor appeared. She stood in an extremely ingenious position, just happening to stand between Jianqin and Lian Qi, who knew whether she had purposefully separated the two of them. Mu, or greets the Wind Ancestor. At this moment, Shangguan Mu arrived beside Jianqin and bowed towards the Wind Ancestor. The Wind Ancestor looked at Shangguan Mu and said gently, Mu, I was in seclusion for long periods of time in the past, so I didn't pay any attention to the matters of the sect. As a result, you suffered quite a lot. I hope you don't hold any grudges towards the sect. The Taoist sect of divine sound is your second home. Thank you for your concern, Wind Ancestor. Jun Kong is already dead, so let's forget about our grievances, said Shangguan Mu. The Wind Ancestor nodded slightly. She did not even glance at Jun Kong's corpse, as if she did not care about Jun Kong's death at all. Instead, she said to Guna and Lian Qi, I have some matters to discuss with Mu and Jianqin alone. The two of you can leave first. Chapter 2575. The powerful barrier continued to envelop the Cloud Moon Peak, hiding everything that happened so that the ordinary disciples of the Taoist sect of divine sound would not know what was happening inside. Jianqin, Shangguan Mu, Dang Wenqin, and the Wind Ancestor stood in the air within the barrier. The atmosphere was no longer as tense as before. It seemed extremely peaceful. The Wind Ancestor looked at Shangguan Mu, gently. There were mixed feelings in her gaze. She thought of her junior sister of the past, who was talented and intelligent enough to push the Taoist sect of divine sound to the peak of glory all by herself. Shangguan Mu'er's talent was so outstanding that she had reached the peak of the divine king realm in such a short amount of time after coming to the Taoist sect of divine sound. Now, she could even injure primordial realm experts, and she was the only successor of her junior sister. The Wind Ancestor seemed to see her junior sister's growth again. It was as if Shangguan Mu, was a true reflection of her junior sister's growth. Mu, I'm mostly responsible for what happened to you in the Taoist sect of divine sound. It's all because I spent most of my time in seclusion and rarely paid any attention to the matters of the Taoist sect of divine sound. That's why this happened. Have you ever hated the Taoist sect of divine sound? The Wind Ancestor asked gently. Because of the zither of the demonic cry, she had truly begun to treat Shangguan Mu, as her junior sister of the past. She had an extremely good relationship with her junior sister, the third ancestor of the Taoist sect of divine sound. They were like sisters. After the third ancestor's death, she had once grieved and lamented. Now that so many years had passed, the only successor of the third ancestor had appeared, reproducing the third ancestor's past self. Naturally, the Wind Ancestor treated Shangguan Mu, differently. Shangguan Mu, shook her head. The Taoist sect of divine sound has given me a new lease on life. I don't want to drag the sect into my personal grievances. Originally, Shangguan Mu, I had already given up on the Taoist sect of divine sound, but the Wind Ancestor's attitude gave her a sliver of hope. After all, Lian Qi did not have the final say in the sect. The Wind Ancestor was the person who truly held the final say in the Taoist sect of divine sound. I don't need to worry if that's what you think. A slight smile appeared on the Wind Ancestor's face. It seemed that the worry in his heart had finally been relieved at this moment. At this moment, the wind ancestor straightened up and continued. Mu, your deeds have already spread through the saints' world. However, your identity as the successor of the third ancestor is enough to attract the attention of many peak organizations in the saints' world. Even some Archean clans won't be able to sit still. As a result, it's indeed not suitable for you to continue staying in the Taoist sect of Divine Sound. This is because the current Taoist sect of Divine Sound is far too weak in the eyes of those peak organizations and archaic clans. It's very difficult for the sect to protect you. As a result, you can temporarily leave the Taoist sect of Divine Sound, but you definitely can't leave the sect. Immediately after, the wind ancestor looked at Jianqin and said, Jianqin, I'll leave Mu to you right now. I trust you will protect her well, Senior, don't worry. I'll definitely protect Mu well. Even if those Archean clans want to target Mu, I won't allow it. Jianqin swore. He still had a lot of merit in the heavenly palace of Bixing, so he could just directly send Mu there. With the first majesty watching over the heavenly palace of Bixing, even those powerful Archean clans would never go to war with the heavenly palace of Bixing over such a small matter. Moreover, Jianqin could sense that the wind ancestor's treatment of Shangguan Mu came from the bottom of her heart. This also changed his opinion of the Taoist sect of Divine Sound slightly. After the wind ancestor's serious warning, Jianqin clasped his fist and bid farewell to the wind ancestor. He left the Taoist sect of Divine Sound with Shangguan Mu. Outside the Taoist sect of Divine Sound, Jianqin and Shangguan Mu held hands as they flew steadily through the air. They directly made their way to a teleportation formation that could cross plains nearby. Jianqin faced the fierce winds in the sky as the mountains and rivers below rapidly receded. He looked at the beauty beside him as his heart became unprecedentedly calm. It had been many years since they had parted on the cloud plain. Now he had finally made it to the Skyfire plain with his own strength and brought Shangguan Mu back from the Taoist sect of Divine Sound. To him, this was like undoing a knot in his heart, allowing him to feel extremely carefree. His thoughts were clear, and the missing part of his heart was filled up, gradually returning to perfection. Suddenly, Jianqin's soul shuddered. At that moment, a sliver of comprehension suddenly appeared in his head. It was like a flash of inspiration, allowing him to grasp something in an instant. Afterwards, Jianqin's soul rapidly soared, rapidly strengthening. At that moment, his comprehension of the way of the sword rapidly deepened. Sword immortal, what are immortals? Immortals are freedom, unrestrained. Immortals are also the world, the universe. Jianqin understood. In that short moment, his comprehension of the way of the sword increased. Even though he had not broken through, he had reached the peak of early sword immortal. He was only a step away from mid-sword immortal. Reuniting with Shangguan Mu and bringing her back seemed like a simple matter, but it had unknowingly filled up Jianqin's heart of ways, allowing him to make a small breakthrough. Now his comprehension of the way of the sword had deepened. It was completely greater than when he fought Lian Qi in the Taoist sect of Divine Sound. He was extremely close to mid-sword immortal. It's a pity that I was only a step away from breaking through. If I could reach mid-sword immortal, I wonder if my chaotic body would be able to take another step forward. Jianqin felt some pity. His chaotic body was currently at the 14th layer. He looked forward to the battle prowess of the 15th layer very much. It was just a pity that his comprehension of the way of the sword had not reached mid-sword immortal. It was restricted by his comprehension, preventing him from breaking through with the chaotic body. Jianqin, you've broken through again. Shangguan Mu sensed Jianqin's abnormality with her sharp senses, so she asked, I've improved slightly. Jianqin nodded. This time, it could be regarded as an epiphany. He had completed it with a single thought and did not waste a lot of time. Mu, let's return to the cloud plain. Let's return to the Tianyuan family. That's our first home in the saint's world. Jianqin held Shangguanmu, Er's hand, and said gently. Shangguanmu nodded. The Tianyuan family in the Dong and province had been founded by Jianqin. She also had special feelings for the Tianyuan family. This feeling was home. It was also belonging. Yeah, let's go home, Shangguanmu said gently. One of the 4 ancestors, Lian Qi, stood on a mountain peak in the Taoist sect of divine sound. His eyes shone with a shocking light as he stared straight outside the sect. His gaze seemed to be able to pierce through space, allowing him to clearly see Jianqin and Shangguanmu. Chapter 2576. In the vast sea of stars of the saint's world, there was a galaxy completely composed of millions of shining stars and meteors. It shone with resplendent starlight as it revolved slowly. It possessed the rhythm of the ways. Galaxies composed of millions of stars were insignificant in the vastness of outer space, because galaxies composed of hundreds of millions were just too many to count in the vast outer space of the saint's world. However, this tiny galaxy was very extraordinary. As it revolved, it gave off a mysterious power that followed the trajectories of the ways and interfered with the circulation of the ways. Clearly, this small galaxy was an incomparably huge array formation. It was a colossal formation composed of millions of stars and meteors. At the center of the galaxy was a green planet teeming with life. Like a precious gem, it was protected by the formation composed of millions of stars. With a single glance, one could tell that this formation, which used the starry sky as the disk and the stars as the child, was protecting the green planet in the center. The green planet was not large. It could not even be ranked among the 81 great planets of the saint's world. However, it radiated with an earth-shaking, terrifying presence that could make even galaxies tremble. It shook up outer space. This was the ancestral ground of one of the Archean clans of the saint's world, the Tao clan. The Tao clan had existed since the previous aeon. They had gone through the endless vicissitudes of history, so it was very difficult to determine just how long they had existed. Over the long years, the heritage of the Tao clan was extremely deep. After countless years of development, the green planet that served as the ancestral ground of the Tao clan had become filled with cities. Over 100 million cultivators lived there. All of these people belonged to the Tao clan. However, not all of them were direct descendants. They possessed the bloodline of the Tao clan. 99% of them were the descendants of the servants, attendants, and subjects of the Tao clan. Among the clans that truly possessed the bloodline of the Tao clan, there was only one in 10,000. Without any exception, there was a statue erected in each of these cities. The statue was of an old man, but his face was blurry. His features were obscured as if they were shrouded by a thick layer of mist. However, those statues carried an aura of disdain for the world, as if they were the only ones in the world. He was the founding ancestor of the Tao clan, a peak figure who did not belong to this aeon and had vanished in the annals of history, the grand exalt of Tao unity. At this moment, several old men sat in a majestic hall within the ancestral grounds of the Tao clan. They stared below, emotionlessly. Covered in wounds, Ba Bu, Gutong, and the others stood below cautiously. Even though Ba Bu and Gutong were infinite primes, they possessed great status even in the saint's world. However, in the Tao clan that had existed since ancient times, infinite primes were not as impressive as people imagined them to be. That's what happened. Great-grandfather, you have to stand up for your grandson. Dao Gongming recounted what he had gone through in the Taoist sect of divine sound with some exaggeration. He pushed all the blame for the evil onto Jianqin and the Taoist sect of divine sound. Gutong, Babu, is that what happened? An old man asked as he looked at Gutong and Babu. Gutong and Babu looked at each other and said, "It's roughly the same. The person who injured us was indeed Jianqin." Jianqin. The light in the eyes of the old men flickered as they murmured, Various information regarding Jianqin immediately appeared in their heads. After pausing for a moment, Babu continued, "Also, Shangguan Mu, seems to have become a couple with Jianqin already." The old men frowned slightly when they heard that. One of them said gently, "Jianqin and Shangguan Mu are actually a couple? That's rather troublesome. It would be fine if it were someone else. But this Jianqin has already returned the Inata Tower. The heavenly palace of Bixing supports him. If we touch him, we'll probably come into conflict with the heavenly palace of Bixing. Since he's connected to the heavenly palace of Bixing, we can't touch him. Our branch's status in the clan has never been great. If we end up coming into conflict with the heavenly palace of Bixing, we won't be able to bear the consequences. Our branch is mainly responsible for collecting information in the Saints' world. Originally, we thought we would be able to gain the upper hand after learning that Shangguan Mu was the successor of the third ancestor. Through Gongming's marriage with her, our status in the clan would skyrocket. But looking at it now, opportunity really doesn't wait for us. It's time to report it. The ancestor was one of the people who pursued the third ancestor in the past. Now that the successor of the third ancestor has appeared, we can't hide it any longer." The old men did not mention anything about avenging Dao Gongming at all, as the heavenly palace of Bixing was behind Jianqin. This was already beyond what they could handle. After leaving the hall, Dao Gongming was in an extremely horrible mood. He said resentfully, "That damned heavenly palace of Bixing. Jianqin injured us like this, so are we just going to let him go? Young master, if you want revenge, you can leak the news to someone else. Our branch doesn't dare to offend the heavenly palace of Bixing. But there are people who can," said Babu at this moment. Dao Gongming's eyes lit up when he heard that. He said, "Do you have a good candidate?" "The foster son of the 9 Brilliant Star Lord from the Star Brilliance Plane, the young Star Lord," said Babu. On the other side, Jianqin and Shangguan Mu had already left the Skyfire plane through a teleportation formation. They constantly teleported across planes along the way. They directly made their way to the cloud plane. He no longer lacked 5-colored divine crystals. After destroying the Gloomwater sect, he had obtained quite a few 5-colored divine crystals from the space rings of the infinite primes. Coupled with the 5-colored divine crystals stored in the Water Cloud Hall, the medium-quality god artifact he had obtained from the Gloomwater sect, Jianqin could be described as extremely wealthy right now. He no longer cared about the 5-colored divine crystals he spent on teleportation formations. After teleporting several times and crossing plane after plane, Jianqin finally arrived at his destination, the Cloud Plane. Within a bustling city in the central region of the Cloud Plane, the teleportation formation shone with dazzling light. Jianqin and Shangguan Mu appeared there. Shangguan Mu wore a veil again, hiding her great beauty. Jianqin did not use his original appearance either. He used the mask that Mo Tianyin had given him to change into an unfamiliar face. After leaving for several decades, he had no idea about the situation on the Cloud Plane. He planned on understanding the situation on the Cloud Plane first before showing his original appearance. The Cloud Plane. I've finally returned. I wonder how the Tianyuan family is doing right now. Is Mingdong still here? Jianqin felt a strange sense of familiarity and closeness as he stood in the unfamiliar land of the central region of the Cloud Plane. This was because this was the Cloud Plane, and the vice leader of the heavenly demon religion, Huayan. Back then, I was forced to leave the Cloud Plane because of you. Today, I, Jianqin, have finally returned. I've come for revenge. Jianqin looked in the direction of the southern region of the Cloud Plane. In a daze, he seemed to see the divine kingdom of Pingtian and the Dong'an province. Chapter 2577. I never thought that the only everlasting empire on the Cloud Plane would actually vanish. Reduced to a bottomless chasm by a huge hand that descended from the sky, he destroyed the Tian Empire in a single strike. Even the heavenless demon Exalt, who was a fourth heavenly layer Grand Prime, died. This person really is powerful. The current cloud plane is occupied by the Righteous Alliance and the Four Symbols Alliance. The Righteous Alliance occupies the central, eastern, western, and northern regions, while the Four Symbols Alliance occupies the southern region. Jianqin and Shangguan Mu sat before each other in a restaurant in the city. They listened to the conversations of the cultivators quietly. Jianqin gained a rough understanding of the current situation on the cloud plane from the conversations of these people. There's no need to doubt that the hand that destroyed the Tian Empire is Mo Tianyan. Mo Tianyan sure is powerful. The renowned heavenly king of azure brilliance was not his opponent, and he managed to take back a droplet of my blood from the heavenly king of azure brilliance. Even the heavenless demon Exalt, a fourth heavenly layer Grand Prime, was slain by Senior Mo Tianyan with a single palm strike. Jianqin thought. At the same time, he was extremely curious about just what heavenly layer Mo Tianyan was at. After sitting for a while, Jianqin and Shangguan Mu stood up and left. This was the central region. Basically, all the news he heard here was about the destruction of the Tian Empire. The Tian Empire was an everlasting empire after all. Even though it had already been destroyed several decades ago, it was still the topic of discussion among many cultivators. Jianqin did not learn anything useful about the situation of the southern region and the Tianyuan family. He did not know whether the Tianyuan family was still unknown or whether these cultivators were just too weak and could not come into contact with these matters. Mu, let's go to the southern region and return to the Tianyuan family. Jianqin held Shangguan Mu's hand and directly made his way towards a regional teleportation formation. He had already learnt that the southern region had been taken over by the Four Symbols Alliance. The Tianyuan family and the Divine Kingdom were both in the southern region, so he still worried about the Tianyuan family. In the center of the city, there were more than a dozen trans-region teleportation portals, all of which were heavily guarded by soldiers. The teleportation formations constantly flickered as cultivators entered and exited. It was bustling. Jianqin and Shangguan Mu directly made their way to an empty regional teleportation formation. Even though Jianqin could forcefully cross the distance between the central and southern regions with his current speed, it was still not as fast as teleportation formations. However, just when they were about to enter a regional teleportation formation, a bloodied, middle-aged man rushed over from afar. He stood on the teleportation formation before Jianqin and Shangguan Mu and called out frantically, "To the southern region! Teleport me to the southern region!" The middle-aged man was a divine king. It was obvious that he was running for his life with a single glance. He was covered in wounds as blood dyed his entire body red. The old man who watched over the teleportation formation was clearly used to this. He accepted the fee and was about to activate the teleportation formation. Stop the teleportation. He killed a member of our Mantua clan, so please give our Mantua clan some face and leave this person behind. Don't teleport him away. At this moment, for Divine King cultivators in uniform chased over from behind. One of them called out. The old man who was about to activate the teleportation formation immediately paused when he heard that it was a member of the Mantua clan. He looked at the bloodied middle-aged man before looking at the 4 Divine King cultivators of the Mantua clan. In the end, he did not activate the teleportation formation. The Mantua clan was rather renowned in the city. Most importantly, the young lady of the Mantua clan had close ties with the young lady of the Fire God clan, who controlled the teleportation formations in the city. As a result, even though the Mantua clan was not a peak clan on the Cloud Plain, some members of the Fire God clan still treated them with respect. The expression of the Divine King on the teleportation formation changed drastically when he saw how the teleportation formation could not be activated. Wu Feng, you want to escape after killing a member of our Mantua clan? You underestimate our Mantua clan too much. The 4 divine king cultivators of the Mantua clan surrounded Wu Feng, who stood on the teleportation formation. They radiated with killing intent. Your Mantua clans, Zhou, Jian, killed my partner. This is a personal grudge between us. I have absolutely no intention of provoking the Mantua clan. Fellow cultivators from the Mantua clan, please investigate this matter clearly, Wu Feng said grimly as he stood on the teleportation array. He knew that it was impossible for him to escape now that the people of the Mantua clan had caught up to him. I don't care what your relationship with Zhou Jian is. Since Zhou Jian is a guest of our Mantua clan, he's a member of our Mantua clan. You dared to kill a guest of our Mantua clan, so that's provoking our Mantua clan. Wu Feng, you better come with us obediently. Don't force us to take action, the divine king of the Mantua clan said coldly. The teleportation formation region was filled with people in the first place, so what happened there naturally attracted the attention of many people. In a short while, many cultivators gathered nearby. Jianqin and Shangguanmu stood in the crowd as well, watching everything unfold. Wu Feng's expression was ugly as he stood on the teleportation formation. Once he went to the Mantua clan, he would definitely die. Wu Feng, I'll give you 10 seconds to surrender, or don't blame us for taking action. Once we take action, you should know the consequences, said one of the divine kings of the Mantua clan, giving him a final warning. Fine, I'll surrender. Wu Feng struggled for quite a while before gritting his teeth in the end. However, with that, he shot into the air and fled into the distance. You're looking to die. The eyes of one of the divine kings of the Mantua clan turned cold. He immediately clawed out, and powerful energy surged into the air, knocking Wu Feng down as he vomited blood. Wu Feng was only a mid-divine king, while the divine king of the Mantua clan had already reached the peak of that realm. Coupled with the fact that Wu Feng was injured, he was obviously not his opponent. Capture him and bring him back to the clan for interrogation. The divine king of the Mantua clan snorted coldly. Immediately, a person shot out a streak of energy and tied up Wu Feng. At this moment, a young man who did not seem to be in his 20s appeared in the teleportation formation region. He saw the captured Wu Feng as soon as he arrived, and he immediately became furious. Father, stop! Let go of my father! The young man bellowed out furiously, and he shot out like an arrow. He immediately stopped the 4 divine kings of the Mantua clan who were about to leave. A mere over-god has actually... One of the divine kings of the Mantua clan said coldly. However, in the next moment his face turned cold. However, when he saw the tablet on the young man's waist, his face immediately changed slightly, and he forcefully stopped himself from saying anything else. Chapter 2578. The 4 divine kings of the Mantua clan did not take the young man seriously at all. He was only an over-god, and he was Wu Feng's son. He was weak and had no background at all. In the eyes of the 4 divine kings of the Mantua clan, he was someone they could kill as they wished. They did not have to worry about the consequences at all. However, when they saw the medallion on the young man's waist, the expressions of the 4 divine kings changed. They frowned and became extremely cautious. "Release my father!" the young man roared out. The young man bellowed out furiously. He looked at the pale-faced, heavily injured Wu Feng, who was tied up by a god king from the Mantua clan. His eyes almost popped out of their sockets as fury burned within him. Killing intent filled the surroundings. However, he did not act recklessly. He knew that the 4 of them were divine king realm experts, and they were extremely powerful. They were not people that an over-god like him could deal with. "Xiaohe, go. Go. Don't worry about me." Wu Feng discovered his son as well, and his face changed drastically. He did not notice the medallion on the Tianyuan family's medallion. However, the people of the Mantua clan would never spare his son, who had suddenly appeared at a time like this. "Killing Zhou Jian is my sole responsibility. I'm willing to go back with you to receive my punishment, but please spare my son. My son is innocent, Wu Feng called out in a hurry. At the same time, he urged Wu Xiaohe to flee. Father, don't worry. Even if they're 100 times bolder, they won't be bold enough to touch me, Wu Xiaohe said fearlessly. He was filled with confidence. Afterwards, he took out the Tianyuan family's medallion and showed it to everyone. He said loudly, "Do you see this? This is the medallion of the Tianyuan family. I don't think there's anyone bold enough to pretend to be a member of the Tianyuan family on the cloud plane right now. I, Wu Xiaohe, have already joined the Tianyuan family. I have become a member of the Tianyuan family. According to the rules of the Tianyuan family, all members of the Tianyuan family and their family will receive the care and protection of the Tianyuan family." Wu Xiaohe announced his identity. Wu Xiaohe announced his identity. His voice was very loud, and it spread through half of the city, attracting the attention of countless people. It's true. It really is the identity token of the Tianyuan family. I didn't expect that he had already joined the Tianyuan family. It's not easy to join the Tianyuan family. The requirements are too high. Many Divine King have tried to join the Tianyuan family, but they were all rejected. So what if he's the Divine King? I even heard that 5 years ago a primordial realm expert wanted to join the Tianyuan family and become a subject of the Tianyuan family, but he was turned down by the Tianyuan family. The reason the Tianyuan family gave was that the primordial realm expert had committed many evil deeds in the past and had committed many despicable deeds. He was mocked by the Tianyuan family without holding back at all, but the primordial realm expert just happened to not dare to do anything. The Tianyuan family is an extremely special small clan on the cloud plane. They only possess a tiny piece of land, and I heard that they aren't very large either. However, even the Righteous Alliance and the Four Symbols Alliance are unwilling to offend them. Many cultivators discussed in the surroundings. They looked at the identity token that represented the Tianyuan family in Wu Xiaohe's hand, and they all showed envy. Of course, only an extremely small number of people in the crowd knew about the Tianyuan family. These people either possessed a certain level of status or were extremely well informed. Most of the spectators did not know about the uniqueness of the Tianyuan family. This was because this was the central region. It was very difficult for regular cultivators to learn about some of the more secretive matters of the southern region. The Tianyuan family. My son has actually joined the Tianyuan family. Wu Feng was completely stunned. As a divine king, he knew quite a lot. He naturally understood just how great of a status the Tianyuan family possessed on the cloud plane. It was a special clan that the Four Symbols Alliance and the Righteous Alliance dared not offend. Moreover, he knew that when Mo Xingfeng of the Tianyuan family inherited the throne several decades ago, both the Four Symbols Alliance and the Righteous Alliance had sent envoys with great gifts to congratulate him. It was a tiny Pingtian empire that no one had even heard of 100 years ago, now that he had just inherited the throne. The two rulers of the cloud plane treated him with such importance and even went to congratulate him in such a friendly manner. This was more than enough to demonstrate just how extraordinary the Tianyuan family was. This was because Mo Xingfeng was one of the founding members of the Tianyuan family. Wu Xiaohe raised the medallion high up and faced the four divine king of the Mantua clan. He said coldly, "Now my father is under the protection of the Tianyuan family. Yet you treat my father like this in front of everyone, treating the Tianyuan family like nothing. This is a provocation to the Tianyuan family. Do you want to become enemies with the Tianyuan family?" Wu Xiaohe's words were forceful, and his attitude was very tough. His voice rang out in the surroundings as he faced the four divine king of the Mantua clan with the medallion. He stood on the side of reason, and he did not overstep his boundaries or do anything drastic. The expressions of the four divine king of the Mantua clan changed. The leading divine king immediately bellowed out, "Don't spout nonsense. Our Mantua clan has always maintained a friendly relationship with the Tianyuan family. Every year, the clan will send envoys to visit the Tianyuan family from afar. We have no intentions of provoking the Tianyuan family at all. The four divine king of the Mantua clan clearly became rather afraid. They possessed some status in the Mantua clan, so they knew even more than Wu Feng. They knew that they could not afford to offend the Tianyuan family. At the same time, they secretly sent a message to the clan head of the Mantua clan. They notified the patriarch of the Mantua clan and waited for him to deal with it. They were afraid that if they messed up, their relationship with the Tianyuan clan would deteriorate. They could not bear that responsibility. Jianqin and Shangguanmu looked at each other in the crowd. They could see deep shock in each other's eyes. Neither of them had thought that the Tianyuan family that had been holed up in the Dong and province for several decades after leaving the Cloud Plain would possess such great power. Even some large clans in the distant central region did not dare to offend them. They even began to doubt whether the Tianyuan family they had heard of was the same Tianyuan family from the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Was there someone with the same name? It looks like the Tianyuan family is even better than I imagined, thought Jianqin. He had always been worried about the Tianyuan family. Now that he saw how powerful the Tianyuan family was on the Cloud Plain, he completely stopped worrying. Afterwards, the patriarch of the Mantua clan personally arrived. After understanding the entire situation, he directly punished the four divine kings who had hunted down Wu Feng. He lowered himself and took the initiative to apologize to Wu Feng and Wu Xiaohe. At the same time, he gave them god-tier pills to heal Wu Feng. The patriarch of the Mantua clan did not mention a single word about Wu Feng killing Zhou Jian. In the end, Wu Feng's situation of certain death was easily resolved by his son with the identity medallion of the Tianyuan family. Chapter 2579. Within the imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire on the southern region of the Cloud Plain, there was an extremely bustling street. Cultivators of various shapes and sizes moved about constantly. It was noisy. In the crowd, a middle-aged man wearing white clothes was slowly walking on the street. Beside this man was a woman wearing a purple dress. She had a graceful figure and a veil covering her face. Although he couldn't see the woman's face, from her devilishly tall figure and her bewitching eyes, he could determine that she was definitely a peerless beauty. The two of them were naturally Jianqin and Shangguanmu. I've been gone for a few decades, and the Cloud Plain has actually changed so drastically. The former ruler of the southern region, the Blood Sun Empire, has actually submitted to the Four Symbols Alliance now, becoming a subsidiary organization of the Four Symbols Alliance. Jianchen sighed emotionally as he sighed. After coming to the southern region, he gained a rather clearer understanding of the situation there, including the Tianyuan family. The Blood Sun Empire still existed. It was still ruled by the former imperial clan, and there was no change in regime. The only difference was that there was now a new master above the Blood Sun Empire. The Tianyuan family was an extremely supreme existence in the southern region of the Cloud Plain. Even the master of the Blood Sun Empire, the Four Symbols Alliance, did not dare to offend them. Of course, many people on the Cloud Plain were confused as to why the Tianyuan clan possessed such a supreme status. More than 99% of the people knew the truth. This was the only piece of information that everyone knew. The only thing that was known to them was that the Tianyuan family possessed a chaotic prime. Of course, only the Grand Primes of the Four Symbols Alliance and the Righteous Alliance knew that the chaotic prime was a divine general of the heavenly palace of Bixing. Due to Mingdong's reluctance to divulge it, the peak experts naturally did not announce it either. Even though they were all prideful figures who could make the Cloud Plain tremble with just a stomp of their feet, all of them felt fear towards the heavenly palace of Bixing. Fortunately, Mingdong arrived in time and took care of the Tianyuan family. Otherwise, I don't know if the Tianyuan family would still be around. Jianqin muttered to himself, his heart filled with joy. He naturally knew that the glory that the Tianyuan family currently enjoyed was brought to them by Mingdong. Jianqin and Shangguanmu left the imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire. Since he knew the Tianyuan family was fine, Jianchen was in no hurry to return immediately. Instead, he captured a bird that was several hundred meters wide and sat on its back with Shangguan Mu. They admired the scenery along the way as they made their way to the Pingtian Empire. The journey was not peaceful either. They would come across powerful beasts from time to time, or they would come across bandits composed of cultivators. Even overgods would not necessarily be able to make it through safely. This was also one of the reasons why so many cultivators chose to use teleportation formations. Not only was it a matter of speed, but it was also safer. After a long journey, Jianchen and Shangguan Mu finally arrived at the Pingtian Empire. The current Pingtian Empire was several times larger than before. Of course, the Pingtian Empire did not wage war against the outside world. Instead, a few divine kingdoms in the surroundings had been destroyed by the heavenly demon religion in the past, and the imperial lineage had vanished. They had become masterless territories, so the Pingtian Empire naturally took them in. Below the bird was an endless fortress that connected the two ends of the land. It was grand and majestic as if it had split the land. Moreover, within the fortress, there were waves of powerful energy, fluctuations spreading out. This stronghold could both defend and attack at the same time. That's quite the investment. Jianchen sat on the bird as he stared the fortress on the border of the Pingtian Empire. He was secretly surprised. He could tell with a single glance that a primordial realm expert had personally cast down the fortress, using up a tremendous amount of precious materials. It was engraved with powerful formations and various offensive methods. It was impossible for the Divine King to do something like that. Just the amount of resources required to construct the fortress would not be enough even if some divine kingdoms emptied out all the wealth they had accumulated over the years. Jianchen and Shangguan Mu sat on the bird and directly flew over the fortress. Halt! However, at this moment, a bellow rang out from the fortress. It was thunderous, booming through the surroundings. The early overgod bird that Jianchen had captured trembled in fright from the bellow. If it were not for Jianchen's suppression, it would not have been able to escape. It probably would have turned around and flown away already. 3 figures shot into the sky from the fortress. They all radiated with the presence of the Divine King, stopping Jianchen and Shangguan Mu. One of them was a late Divine King, while the other 2 were mid-Divine King. Moreover, they radiated with a heavy presence of malice. Clearly, they were vicious people who had emerged from mountains of corpses and seas of blood. Sirs, don't you know the rules of our Pingtian Empire? No matter what organization you come from, you must enter through the gates, or it will be seen as a provocation to our Pingtian Empire, the burly man at the late Divine King growled. Jianchen was clearly stunned. A sliver of surprise appeared on his face. He had never thought that the divine kingdom of Pingtian would become so domineering and dignified in just a few decades since he had left. No matter what organization they came from, they had to enter through the gates. Did that not include the 2 rulers of the Cloud Plain, the 4 Symbols Alliance and the Righteous Alliance? Since when had the Pingtian Empire become so domineering? Shangguan Mu blinked as well. She was rather confused. Was this really the divine kingdom of Pingtian she knew? Who came up with this rule? Was it the emperor of the Pingtian Empire? Jianchen asked. The ruler of a divine kingdom was usually referred to as a divine king, but once an organization reached the primordial realm, the ruler would basically be referred to as an emperor. Emperors naturally don't have the right to come up with a rule like that. This rule was personally set by the vice patriarch of the Tianyuan family, the divine king said coldly and arrogantly. Jianchen became stunned when he heard that. Since when did the Tianyuan family have a vice patriarch? Who's the vice patriarch? Jianchen asked. The divine king frowned and said, You talk too much. If you want to enter the Pingtian Empire, you better follow the rules of our Pingtian Empire and enter through the gates. Otherwise, you'll be provoking our Pingtian Empire. As the divine king spoke, a divine king flew over with a few over-gods with his head held high. They did not enter through the gates. Instead, they directly flew through the air, entering the territory of the Pingtian Empire without any obstructions. Why can they enter directly but we can't? Jianchen asked as he looked at the group of people. Can't you see their clothes and the medallions on their waists? They're from the Tianyuan family, so they naturally don't need to follow this rule, the Divine King said. He had become rather impatient. Chapter 2580. What did you say? You're from the Tianyuan family? The Divine King studied Jianchen in doubt. He was not the only one. Even the other two Divine Kings who had charged out of the fortress were in disbelief. Since he was from the Tianyuan family, why did he ask such a simple question before? It was as if he knew nothing about the Tianyuan family and the Pingtian Empire. I'll be going first. See you next time. Jianchen did not explain. He smiled faintly and wrapped his arm around Shangguan Mu's slender waist. He gently tapped the bird's back with the tip of his foot, and immediately the laws of space pulsed. He and Shangguan Mu vanished. The laws of space. Oh no, he's forced his way into the territory of our empire. The Divine King's face sank. I'll contact the Emperor immediately. One of the two Divine King called out. The Divine King glared at him when he heard that. What's the point of contacting the Emperor? Go report to the Tianyuan family. It's not like you don't know that all the experts of the Pingtian Empire are gathered in the Tianyuan family. The Divine King, who had been reprimanded, smiled embarrassedly. He scratched the back of his head and chuckled. Yes. I'll contact the Tianyuan family right now. Jianchen and Shangguan Mu flew through the air in the Pingtian Empire, directly making their way to the Dong'an province. The current Pingtian Empire really is much more powerful than before. Just a single fortress on the border is guarded by 3 Divine King experts, and there's even a late Divine King among them. The wind howled in the sky as Jianchen moved against the wind. His clothes and hair fluttered as he sighed emotionally. In the past, there were only 2 Divine King realm experts in the entire Divine Kingdom. They were the Divine King Pingtian and the Grand Imperial Protector. However, for the sake of the emulsion, 3 Divine King had been sent out to guard the border. This was something unimaginable in the past. It's all thanks to the Tianyuan family. Everyone in the outside world is saying that the Pingtian Empire belongs to the Tianyuan family. Shangguan Mu rolled her eyes at Jianchen, as if she was silently saying that he was far too irresponsible as a patriarch. As the patriarch of the clan, he did not even know about his own situation. A primordial realm expert is investigating. Suddenly, Jianchen's eyes narrowed. He stared in the direction of the Dong and province and immediately used a sliver of the power of the supreme way of the sword to conceal Shangguan Mu. He did not use the supreme way of the sword completely. He only enveloped a region and formed his own domain, preventing the senses of the soul from entering. Basically, as soon as Jianchen did that, a powerful sense of the soul permeated over. It directly passed by where Jianchen and Shangguan Mu were, expanding even further until it enveloped the entire Pingtian Empire. This sense of the soul is around the level of a first heavenly layer infinite prime. As soon as we passed by the fortress, the senses of the soul of a primordial realm expert immediately swept over, covering the entire empire. Don't tell me the senses of the soul have come to investigate us? Jianchen murmured to himself. The light in Shangguan Mu's eyes flickered. After a moment of thought, she said, "That really is possible. It looks like the Tianyuan family you founded in the past is quite dignified to have mobilized a primordial realm expert so easily. They don't allow any provocation." Jianchen laughed dryly. Now he could feel that the Tianyuan family really did seem to possess a dignified aura that could not be violated. They had directly mobilized a primordial realm expert just because they broke the rules and invaded a fortress. They were even stricter than some eternal empires. However, at this moment, an even more powerful sense of the soul swept over. In a single instance, it enveloped the entire Pingtian Empire, a seventh heavenly layer infinite prime. Jianqin was secretly surprised. He had Mo Tianyun's mask, so even the senses of a grand prime soul would struggle to see through him. However, before the senses of a seventh heavenly layer infinite prime, he was unable to continue hiding Shangguan. She was directly exposed. It's very rare to see infinite primes on the cloud plane. They basically spend all their time in seclusion. 1,000 years can pass in the blink of an eye, and they rarely move about. Unless something major happens, it's very difficult to disturb them. Yet, 2 of them have appeared all of a sudden. Jianqin was rather surprised. After all, this had happened in the Pingtian Empire. How could a new empire possess so many primordial realm experts? Although he had already learnt that the Tianyuan family possessed a very special status and was not weak, he discovered that he had still underestimated them. At this moment, a figure shot over with lightning speed. It moved extremely quickly, traversing 10,000 kilometers in the next moment and appearing before the 2 of them in the blink of an eye. He was a middle-aged man in white robes. His appearance was nothing special, but he gave off the powerful presence of a primordial realm expert. When he saw Jianqin, a sliver of surprise appeared in his eyes as he failed to discover Jianqin with the senses of his soul. "Who are you? Where do you come from? Why have you infiltrated the Pingtian Empire?" The middle-aged man stared at Jianqin and Shangguan emotionlessly. He was indifferent. Swish, swish, swish. At this time, figures flashed in the surroundings. 3 more figures appeared beside the middle-aged man. They were 2 old men and a young woman who was dressed gorgeously. Her entire body exuded a charming aura. Apart from the middle-aged man who had arrived first, who was a 7th heavenly layer infinite prime, the other 3 people were all 7th heavenly layer infinite primes. The 3 people who came later were all 1st heavenly layer or 2nd heavenly layer infinite primes. "Where have you come from, kid? You sure are bold to ignore the rules set down by the Tianyuan family and barge into the Pingtian Empire. Haven't your seniors told you to follow the rules in the Pingtian Empire?" The young woman giggled. "Let's capture them first and bring them back for questioning. If they have ill intentions, we'll deal with them according to the law. If they're disciples of large clans who have barged in without knowing the rules, we'll get their seniors to come and get them personally," an old man said coldly. Afterwards, he clasped his hands towards the middle-aged man who was a 7th heavenly layer infinite prime politely and said, "Protector Shui, please return. Leave the trifles here to the 3 of us." "All right." The middle-aged man nodded and was about to leave. The old man looked at Jianqin and Shangguan and said coldly, "Capture them first and take them back to the clan." The old man was a 2nd heavenly layer infinite prime. With that, he was about to take action. "Aren't you going to ask about our identities before you take action?" Shangguan smiled mysteriously under her veil. She pointed at Jianqin beside her and said, "Old man, do you know who this is?" "Humph, who cares who you are? You're just a young master of a peak clan in the territory of the Pingtian Empire. You have to follow the rules," the old man said coldly. Afterwards, he directly took action. A huge hand of energy descended from the sky, enveloping Jianqin and Shangguan Shangguan glanced at the hand indifferently and said steadily, "It looks like you plan on capturing the patriarch of the Tianyuan family." "What? The patriarch of the Tianyuan family?" Hearing this, the old man was shocked and immediately stopped. The giant energy palm stopped in midair and didn't fall. "What did you just say?" He stared at Shangguan without blinking at all. He was stunned as if he suspected that he had misheard. Is there something wrong with my ears? I think I heard the patriarch of the Tianyuan family," the well-dressed woman with a mature bearing said in surprise. She glanced past Shangguan and Jianqin with her limpid eyes. She was surprised and doubtful. "What did you just say?" At this moment, Even Protector Shui, who was about to leave, paused. He turned around and stared at Shangguan Mu'er. Chapter 2581. Immediately, the surroundings fell silent. The 4 primordial realm experts who had hurried over from the Tianyuan family all stared at Jianqin. They stared at Jianqin in surprise, and disbelief as they studied him seriously. They naturally knew that the patriarch of the Tianyuan family was called Jianqin, but in reality, they had never seen the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan ever since they joined the Tianyuan family. Yet, someone had suddenly appeared and claimed that he was the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan, which stunned the 4 of them. A while later, the old man who wanted to grab Jianqin pulled back his hand. He studied Jianqin carefully and murmured, "Although I've never seen the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan in person, I've seen his portrait. There really is some resemblance. Are you really the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan, Jianqin? Are you sure you're not joking with us? You need to understand that the consequences of impersonating the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan are extremely severe," said the woman from the group. Among the 4 of them, the woman spoke. She wore a long dress, and her beauty was moving. Even though she had a straight face at this moment, it was still difficult for her to conceal her seductive charm that teased others. "Young Master Ming, you'll know whether he is or not," said Protector Shui. He had already extended the senses of his soul to the Tianyuan family, reporting everything that had happened. "Brother, is it really you? You've finally returned." Very soon, a pleasantly surprised voice rang out from the distance. Ming Dong walked over excitedly with joy written all over his face. He moved extremely quickly, crossing several kilometers or even several dozen kilometers with each step. He appeared before Jianqin in a short while. The divine general from the heavenly palace of Bixing, Ming Xie, followed closely behind Ming Dong. He remained by Ming Dong's side at all times. "Ha ha ha ha! I've been waiting for you in the Tianyuan family for decades. If you hadn't come back, I would have usurped the throne." Ming Dong laughed loudly and gave Jianqin a warm hug. They had known each other for an extremely long time. Back on the Tianyuan continent, they had just gotten to know each other as cultivators who had just embarked on the path of cultivation. Later on, they had developed the flame mercenaries together and roamed the Tianyuan continent. Now, they had become experts of the saint's world. All along the way, the 2 of them had experienced ups and downs. They'd been baptized in blood and the flames of war, and they'd walked out from mountains of corpses and suffering. They'd gone through life and death together, and they'd long since established a deep and everlasting friendship that wasn't something that time could erase. Behind Ming Dong, a group of people hurried over from the direction of the Tianyuan family. They were all familiar faces. It was Qing Yishuan, who was dressed in green and had a cold expression. She had the air of a chivalrous woman. The beautiful Shiyu, who gave off a rather noble bearing, and the golden-robed newbies, who smiled, strangely charged at the very front. Behind them was the ancestor of the Mo clan, Mo Ling, who had been there the earliest, as well as the senior members of the Tianyuan family. They were all excited. These people were not the strongest in the Tianyuan family. As a matter of fact, they were not even worth mentioning. However, they were definitely the most senior generation. They had been contributing since the founding of the Tianyuan family. Even if they didn't contribute much, they still worked hard. "Brother Jianqin, you finally returned." In the crowd, a young girl in her early 20s, dressed in a spotless white robe, shouted with a face full of surprise. She was Mo Yen, the young miss of the Mo clan in the past. After several decades, Mo Yen had truly become an elegant and refined lady. She was brimming with youthful vigor, having lost her childishness and gained some maturity. Shiyu and Qing Yishuan stood to either side of Mo Yen. Both of them possessed extraordinary appearances. When they stood together, they formed a sight that could not be ignored. Shiyu's eyes were filled with undisguised excitement. She smiled faintly as she stared straight at Jianqin. Tears seemed to glisten in her eyes. Qing Yishuan, on the other hand, was very calm. She still maintained her cold demeanor, like an iceberg. She looked at Jianqin with some mixed feelings. Greetings to the patriarch. The senior members of the Tianyuan family all clasped their fists and bowed. I never thought that he really would be the patriarch of the Tianyuan family. Protector Shui watched this from one side. He looked at Mingdong and Jianqin, who embraced each other passionately, and he fell silent. The three other primordial realm experts who had come to stop Jianqin also confirmed Jianqin's identity. They looked at each other and became rather stern. I never thought that the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan, Jianqin, would actually return. However, looking at him, it'll probably be difficult for him to convince everyone. There are many proud, old people in the Tianyuan family right now. Apart from young Master Ming, Senior Ming, and Senior Su, they won't show any respect to anyone else. Jianqin has returned to the Tianyuan family. If he wants to take over the clan, it'll be difficult for him to do so. That's right. Some of the old people are just too arrogant. They act submissively before young Master Ming, as if they're completely obedient to him. But they act all high and mighty before us. It's basically impossible for Jianqin to take over the authority of the Tianyuan family. It'll be up to Jianqin now. The two old men who were infinite primes said secretly. They did not bow towards Jianqin like the others. Clearly, as primordial realm experts, they did not take Jianqin too seriously. This was because everyone understood that the Tianyuan family's current development was all thanks to Jianqin. Many of them did not recognize the nominal patriarch of the clan, Jianqin. Even though Mingdong was only a peak divine king, he had a peak chaotic realm expert protecting him. And even the two great organizations on the cloud plane did not dare to offend him. That was more than enough to demonstrate just how extraordinary and illustrious Mingdong's identity was. As a result, all the primordial realm experts who joined the Tianyuan family accepted Mingdong wholeheartedly. They accepted him as their leader and were willing to follow his orders. However, Jianqin was a different story. After some small talk, everyone returned to the Dong and province. The current Dong and province had changed drastically compared to the past. The territory of the provincial city had expanded by 100 times. It had basically become a huge city. Moreover, it was divided into an inner city and an outer city. The outer city possessed 2 walls. The inner city referred to the original Dong and province. It seemed even more prosperous, and the walls were even more majestic. From afar, it seemed like a primordial beast prostrated on the ground, giving off a tremendous pressure. Earth-shaking energy was hidden within. The outer city referred to the territory that had spread out from the original Dong and province. After several decades of development, it had become prosperous as well. With Jianqin and Mingdong in the lead, the group flew over the Dong and province in a grand fashion, causing a great uproar in the provincial city. At that moment, countless people in the city raised their heads to look at the large group in the sky. Their eyes were filled with envy and yearning. Who are these people? How dare they fly in the Dong and province? Isn't flying forbidden in the provincial city? Everyone has to walk. Are you an idiot? They must be from the Tianyuan family if they're bold enough to fly in the Dong and province. I think I see Elder Shiyu and a few other primordial realm experts. Why are they all following behind us? Who are the 2 young people at the very front? Don't tell me one of them is the legendary young Master Mingdong from the Tianyuan family. I really can't think of a second person who can make primordial realm experts follow behind him aside from young Master Ming. If the first person is young Master Ming, who's the second person? The provincial city of the Dong and province was filled with discussions. However, Jianqin and the others ignored all of this. They completely ignored the discussions below. They directly passed through the outer city and entered the inner city, arriving in the Tianyuan family. Senior Su, you're here as well. Jianqin discovered a familiar person in great surprise as soon as he returned to the Tianyuan family. She was Su Ran, who had worked with him to destroy the Gloomwater sect. Su Ran was still like an old woman. Her white hair draped over her shoulders, and she was covered in wrinkles. Originally, with her current cultivation, it would have been easy for her to restore her former beauty, but her heart was already old, and there were many things that she saw lightly. She was no longer like other women who cared too much about their appearance. "I have nowhere else to go in the entire Saints' world, so I can only stay here. I wonder if you'll welcome me," said Su Ran. Su Ran spoke with an aged yet forceful voice. She held a stick made of withered wood as she stood there, and her aura was completely restrained, causing her to seem like an extremely ordinary old woman. However, apart from Jianqin, Mingxia, and Shangguan Mu, everyone else clasped their fists and bowed politely when they saw Su Ran. Even Protector Shui was no exception. "Welcome, welcome. It's the honor of our Tianyuan family that Senior is willing to stay here." Jianqin was overjoyed. Su Ran was a fifth heavenly layer chaotic prime. With her around, the Tianyuan family would become even more stable. Chapter 2582. Su Ran could not help but smile faintly. As she chatted with Jianqin, she glanced past Mingdong, who stood beside Jianqin, and Mingxia, who stood beside Mingdong. Her eyes were filled with mixed emotions. She had already learnt Mingdong's true identity, so she fell silent. In the past, she could have been as glorious as Mingdong, possessing an extremely great identity and background. Her future was bright, but all of that had been shattered by the incident caused by her master. "Senior Su, I obtained some hell water when I destroyed the Gloomwater sect. Please accept this droplet of hell water." Jianqin immediately took out a droplet of hell water and passed it to Su Ran in a jade bottle of high quality. Su Ran did not turn him down. She stowed the hell water away and said hell water is good stuff. In particular, it has wondrous effects and nourishes the soul. It's even effective on Grand Primes. It's extremely rare in the Saints' world, where it's priceless. A single droplet is hard to come by, so don't waste it recklessly. You have to use it wisely. Jianqin nodded. He had already understood the effects of hell water, but he felt that the legends were slightly exaggerated. After all, he had ingested hell water before and discovered that it was quite effective, but it was not as great as the legends said. The main effect of hell water is towards the soul. My soul has fused with a droplet of true chaotic force, so it has undergone a qualitative change. Is that the reason why the effects of hell water are greatly reduced? Jianqin thought. He could not help but become suspicious. If that really was the case, he did not plan on ingesting the remaining droplets of hell water. Otherwise, he would not be able to unleash the full effects of hell water. It would be far too wasteful. The light in the eyes of Protector Shui and the 3 other Primordial Realm experts who had come to stop Jianqin behind Jianqin all flickered when they heard about hell water. He revealed a burning and thirsty expression. The Aqua Plane was just too far away from the Cloud Plane, so they had never heard of the Peak sect on the Aqua Plane, the Gloomwater sect. However, the specialty of the Aqua Plane, hell water, was renowned in the Saints' world. It was a rare soul treasure, so they all coveted it. A droplet of hell water was enough for infinite primes like them to fight tooth and nail over it. It could lead to a bloody battle between Primordial Realm experts. However, they did not dare to act rashly in the Tianyuan family. After a simple exchange of greetings, Su Ran directly left and returned to the independent area that the Tianyuan family had specially allocated for her to cultivate in seclusion. At her level of cultivation, she was basically detached from worldly affairs and didn't care about the mortal world. Therefore, she never asked about or paid attention to the various matters within the Tianyuan family. She only needed to sit here and everything was enough. Only when something big happened would she be alarmed. After Su Ran left, Jianqin and the others arrived in the Tianyuan family. They entered the majestic and dignified discussion hall and learned about the current situation of the Tianyuan family from everyone. "Brother, you deal with the matters of the clan first. I'll be leaving first. We'll catch up after you're done with the matters of the clan. Jianqin sat down on the patriarch's seat casually and naturally in the discussion hall. The other senior members and upper echelon of the Tianyuan family all sat to the two sides of him quietly, forming a line towards the entrance. Mingdong was a carefree person, so he was rather unaccustomed to a situation like this. As a result, he took his leave early and left with Ming Xia. Shi Yu took the initiative to stand forward and report the exact situation of the Tianyuan family to Jianqin. Currently, our Tianyuan family has recruited over 150 Divine King experts and 18 Primordial Realm experts above the Divine King realm. 10 of them are early infinite primes, 5 are mid-infinite primes, and only 3 are late infinite primes. Moreover, our Tianyuan family has created an army of 10,000 people. They're all gods and above, and a third of them are over-gods. We've named the army the Sword God Army, and Newbies is the commander of the Sword God Army. The closest empire, the Heavenly Moon Empire, wants to ally with our Pink Tian Empire, but we've turned them down. However, the Heavenly Moon Empire has given us 3 high-grade, divine, crystal mines. Over the past few decades, the Tianyuan family had truly changed drastically. Shi Yu recounted everything in detail for several hours. Only then did she manage to describe the current Tianyuan family. Shi Yu returned to her seat after reporting and stopping her vomiting. Jianqin, on the other hand, sank into his thoughts as if he had a lot on his mind. He had returned after several decades, but he also understood that he could no longer see some of his old friends from the Tianyuan family. Xiao, Jin, and Xiaoling had left with a mysterious old man. There had been no news of them since then, and their whereabouts were unknown. Jianqin knew about their situation. They had probably returned to Mo Tianyun's side. Moreover, Ruijin, Honglian, and Blackfish, the 3 seniors who had protected him on the Tianyuan continent, had left the Tianyuan family many years ago to train. They had yet to return, and there was no news of them as well. The White Tiger, whom he had basically watched grow up, had also left the Tianyuan family and gone to a distant place to train. There was still no news of him. Sigh. After quite a while, Jianqin let out a long sigh. His voice was filled with melancholy, reminiscence, and yearning. The Tianyuan family had completely stabilized now. They had become powerful, but how many of his acquaintances and friends who had come to the Saints' world with him from the Tianyuan continent were still around? As a matter of fact, he did not even know if he would be able to see them again in the dangerous Saints' world. In particular, Ruijin, Honglian, and Blackfish were seniors who had helped Jianqin greatly. If anything happened to them, Jianqin would definitely feel guilty for the rest of his life. At this moment, a divine hull appeared in Jianqin's hand. He Yu was roused from cultivating in the divine hall by Jianqin, and he walked out. Master. He Yu clasped his fist at Jianqin politely. Heya, look through these people one by one. Remember their presences, said Jianqin. Yes, master. At this moment, Newbie said from his seat lazily, Jianqin, there's one more thing that can't be ignored. When Mingdong came to the Tianyuan family, he gave us a tremendous amount of cultivation resources and legacy cultivation methods. That little bastard sure is free, tossing such a great amount of wealth to us so that we can deal with it ourselves. He just has a chaotic prime guard with him as he travels around with that princess of some empire. His life is as happy as it can be, but it's been hard on us. The distribution of these resources and legacies has caused a great controversy in the Tianyuan family. We obviously have to take care of the founding members of the Tianyuan family. No matter what their talent is, we can't lack the resources and legacies. However, in the eyes of the people who joined our Tianyuan family later on, we're being unfair. The weaker people obviously don't dare to say it out loud, but the primordial realm experts we've recruited make it rather obvious. They say things like cultivation needs, unhealed injuries, problems with their cultivation methods, or things they need to break through. In short, a few primordial realm experts use various excuses to ask for resources and legacies. If we refuse to give them to them, They'll keep a straight face, or if they're in a bad mood, they'll directly unleash the pressure of a primordial realm expert, immobilizing you. Chapter 2583. Jianqin immediately frowned when he learnt about this. He could also tell that the divine king of the Tianyuan family was not enough to keep the primordial realm experts in check. "Didn't you tell Mingdong about this?" Jianqin asked. He also understood that all primordial realm experts were prideful people. Even in some peak clans, they possessed a certain amount of status. It was very difficult for them to lower their heads to weaker cultivators unless they possessed great backgrounds. However, although Jianqin understood this, he would never allow the recruited primordial realm experts to strut around in front of his friends and the senior members of the Tianyuan family. "Brother Jianqin, can you consider for us? How can we go to Brother Jianqin for something like this? Wouldn't that be like a child complaining to an adult after being bullied? Moreover, Brother Jianqin might not even be as old as us. We're people who care about our dignity, so how can we lower ourselves?" Mo Yen said. She did not mince her words. Her delicate face was filled with grievance. "Mo Yen, have any of them bullied you?" Jianqin's face sank. Mo Yen held an important place in his heart. He had already begun to treat her as his own sister. He would never allow anyone to bully Mo Yen. Mo Yen shook her head. "They haven't bullied me, but I've been looked down upon quite a few times. Among the primordial realm experts who have joined our Tianyuan family, a portion of them are just too arrogant. As long as they're present, there's no place for me to speak. Otherwise, as long as I'm bold enough to speak, they'll immediately put on airs and say I have no right to interrupt. How infuriating. That Protector Shan in particular is the worst. He's the most arrogant. He was the most arrogant and disgusting person. In front of Big Brother Mingdong, he was extremely obedient as a servant. But once Big Brother Mingdong left, Guardian Shan immediately thinks he's number one in the world. He looks down on everyone in the Tianyuan family. He doesn't even give face to Big Sister Shiyu. He's even gotten into arguments with Big Sister Shiyu several times. If this wasn't the Tianyuan family, I'm worried that Guardian Shan would attack Big Sister Shiyu. Hearing this, Jianqin's face became gloomy. He didn't expect such a ridiculous thing to happen in the Tianyuan family. A group of outsiders was actually suppressing an important member of the Tianyuan family. How could this be? Mo Yen paused. She gritted her teeth and said, "And Protector Xiang, he's the person I hate the most. He even bullied my great-grandfather. Yen, don't talk about it." "It's just a small matter," said Mo Ling, who was sitting below. He seemed to be worried. Mo Ling was the ancestor of the Mo clan in the past. At the same time, he was the only god in the Mo clan. In the past few years, the Tianyuan family had developed rapidly, so they did not lack cultivation resources. Coupled with the heavenly resources Mingdong had brought, Mo Ling's cultivation had increased significantly. He had become an overgod now. Overgods were already renowned experts in the divine kingdom of Pingtian in the past. Their names were enough to spread across the entire divine kingdom, but they were nothing in the current Tianyuan family. "Keep going," Jianqin said emotionlessly. Mo Yen looked at Mo Ling and said furiously, "Great-grandfather, are you still worried about offending Protector Xiang? You can endure the grievances you suffered in the past, but I definitely can't. We're the official members of the Tianyuan family. Those primordial realm experts who have joined our Tianyuan family can only be regarded as subjects or guests. They're not official members, so why do they take so much from us every year and even bully us?" Mo Yan's emotions fluctuated greatly. She became more and more agitated as she spoke. "Brother Jianqin, you have to stand up for great-grandfather. Back then, it was because great-grandfather suggested attacking the Heavenly Moon Empire against Protector Xiang that he was directly thrown out of the hall by his neck. How dare you?" Jianqin was utterly furious. He slammed the table and stood up. He called out, "Pass down the order." Immediately summon all the primordial realm experts here. No one is to be delayed. This was the first order Jianqin gave out as the patriarch after returning to the Tianyuan family. His presence surged, giving off an unquestionable sense of dignity. After all, he was no longer the same as before. He naturally possessed a sense of dignity. He just did not show it normally. The patriarch's order spread in all directions as soon as possible. Various attendants notified all the primordial realm experts of the Tianyuan family as quickly as possible. Of course, Su Ran was an exception. Her status in the Tianyuan family was very great, so she was not included. What? The patriarch of the Tianyuan clan? Has Jianqin returned after disappearing for so many years? What did you say? The patriarch of the Tianyuan clan, Jianqin, has summoned all the primordial realm experts to the discussion hall? Hee. Does this Jianqin really think he's something? He's actually ordering us around. If the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan has summoned us, why hasn't he come personally? We're primordial realm experts. Yet he's only sent a servant to notify us. What arrogance. Does he think he's young Master Ming? If young Master Ming summoned us, I would naturally go as soon as possible. As for this, Jianqin, just tell him I'm cultivating and don't have the time. At that moment, the voices of primordial realm experts rang out from various places in the Tianyuan family. Most of them were displeased and did not take it too seriously. Soon after, he saw people walking out in 2s and 3s from all over the place. They walked towards the conference hall at a leisurely pace, as if they were taking a stroll in the park. Their expressions carried a hint of impatience. A divine hall stood in another direction of the Tianyuan family. It was a low-quality god artifact, and it belonged to a late infinite prime of the Tianyuan family, Protector Shan. At this moment, a middle-aged man with thick eyebrows sat in the divine hall as he cultivated. After learning that Jianqin had summoned all the primordial realm experts to the discussion hall, he frowned slightly. My cultivation is currently at a critical juncture. I can't stop unless there's something extremely important. Just tell Jianqin that I don't have the time. Protector Shan said coldly. He directly referred to Jianqin by his name, showing no respect for the patriarch at all. Protector Shan, I've just received news that the patriarch, Jianqin, who has just returned, possesses hell water, the attendant who had come to inform Protector Shan said quietly outside the divine hall. What? Hell water? Are you certain? Protector Shan widened his eyes in surprise and joy. It's absolutely true. Chapter 2584. At the same time, a white-robed, middle-aged man with a very ordinary appearance stood beside a pool with his hands behind his back in a quiet manner within the Tianyuan family. He stared at a golden tortoise that slowly crawled through the pool in a daze. The middle-aged man was one of the 3 late infinite primes of the Tianyuan family, Protector Shui. Protector Shui was a 7th heavenly layer infinite prime. Even though he was not the most powerful out of the 3 of them, he was definitely the most respected figure in the Tianyuan clan. There was no one like him. Although they were all late infinite primes, Protector Shui was different from Protector Shan and Protector Qi. In the eyes of all the members of the Tianyuan family, he was a primordial realm expert who was very easy to talk to. This was because it was very difficult to sense the pressure of a primordial realm expert from him, nor did he put on any airs. He did not possess the arrogance and condescension that other primordial realm experts possessed. That was not all. Out of all the primordial realm experts who had joined the Tianyuan family, Protector Shui was the one who had contributed the most to the Tianyuan family. As a result, Protector Shui was deeply respected by the upper echelon and senior members of the Tianyuan family. Protector Shui, the patriarch has ordered all the primordial realm protectors to gather in the discussion hall. At this moment, an attendant's voice rang out from outside the manor. I understand, Protector Shui said indifferently. He shifted his gaze away from the golden tortoise and stared in the direction of the discussion hall. His gaze deepened. Jianqin has just returned. Yet he's already gathered all the primordial realm experts under the Patriarch's orders. Although he's the Patriarch, the person that everyone truly listens to in the Tianyuan family is Mingdong. No one will take him seriously as the so-called Patriarch. Will he be able to control the situation like this? Protector, Shui murmured. His eyes flickered as he murmured to himself. After all, I've already joined the Tianyuan family and become a protector. Since the head of the family has summoned me, I should go. A protector is a protector. As long as I'm a protector, I can't go against the head of the family's orders. Young master, recuperate first. We'll be safe here for now. They won't be able to find this place any time soon. I'll definitely find a way to reshape your soul and wake you up. Protector, Shui said firmly as he stared at the golden turtle in the pool. The golden tortoise in the pool was only the size of a palm. Its small eyes emitted a murky light as it crawled aimlessly in the pool. Its golden tortoise shell was covered with strange patterns that looked extremely mysterious. Faintly, it seemed to be resonating with the grand Tao of heaven and earth. It was as if traces of the great Tao were growing on its golden tortoise shell. Protector Shui waved his hand, and a formation immediately rose up, enveloping the entire pool. With a flash, he directly made his way to the discussion hall. All the primordial realm experts of the Tianyuan family gathered in the discussion hall. Out of the 18 recruited primordial realm experts, 15 of them arrived in the end. The arrival of the 15 primordial realm experts made some of the important members of the clan feel pressured. Many of them began to stand up and give up their seats voluntarily. At the very front of the discussion hall, closest to the Patriarch's throne, there were 3 chairs arranged in a row. The 3 chairs were prepared for the 3 late infinite primes. In reality, the order of the 3 chairs had already been decided. The 3 late infinite primes all had a seat that belonged to them. This was because Mingdong had held a meeting like this in the past, and it had happened more than once. The order of the 3 chairs had been decided at that time. Protector Shui and Protector Qi sat on the 2 sides of the 3 chairs. The central seat was specially reserved for Protector Shan. However, the seat that originally belonged to Protector Shan had been taken by someone else. To no surprise, the person was Heya. Protector Qi was an old man. He was skinny, as if he lacked vitality. He seemed rather sinister. He looked at Heya, who was sitting on the seat that belonged to Protector Shan, and his expression was slightly startled. Soon after, the corners of his mouth revealed a somewhat sinister smile. He did not say anything as he directly sat on his seat and closed his eyes to rest. He directly ignored Jianqin, who sat on the Patriarch's throne. In his eyes, he really did not take the Patriarch of the Tianyuan clan seriously. He only recognized 3 people in the Tianyuan family, which were Mingdong, Mingxie, and Su Ran. He did not even take Shiyu's identity as a princess of the Shi dynasty too seriously. Protector Shui's eyes narrowed when he saw Heya. He glanced at Jianqin deeply and could clearly sense that the meeting this time would not be peaceful. The other primordial realm experts were surprised when they saw where Heya sat. At that moment, they all began to communicate secretly through communication techniques. At this moment, Protector Shan arrived in the discussion hall. When he saw that his seat had been taken by a stranger, and the person was only a first heavenly layer infinite prime, he immediately became furious. He made his way towards Heya's seat step by step. His burly body really did seem like a mountain. It contained an immeasurable weight, and every single step it took emitted oppressive thumps that shook the entire hall to the point it was trembling. "Who are you? Don't you know whose seat this belongs to?" Protector Shan stared at Heya with a piercing gaze. His eyes were filled with cold, killing intent. Whether it was the senior members who had retreated to the very back or the primordial realm protectors, they all held their breaths. They wanted to see how Jianqin would deal with this matter. He's Heya. From today onwards, this seat belongs to him. Hey, you did not say anything, but Jianqin, who sat on the Patriarch's throne, spoke. He sat there boldly and emotionlessly. His voice was cold and filled with an unquestionable sense of dignity. Protector Shan suddenly looked at Jianqin. His gaze was extremely sharp, and his presence was pressing. However, in the next moment, he remembered that Jianqin possessed hell water that he desired, so he changed his expression decisively. Whatever. For the sake of the hell water, I'll just bear with it for now, thought Protector Shan. Protector Shan thought like that. He smiled and clasped his fist towards Jianqin amicably. Since the Patriarch has said that the seat belongs to Heya, I'll give it to Heya from today onwards. With that, Protector Shan took out a chair from his space ring and placed it on the side. He sat there like nothing had happened. Jianqin glanced past Protector Shan with his sharp gaze. He was slightly surprised. Originally, he thought that Protector Shan would flare up on the spot, but he never thought that Protector Shan would actually bear with it. This surprised him slightly. P.S. Originally, I planned on releasing 2 chapters today, one for yesterday and one for today, but I've been in a bad condition recently, so I've been writing very slowly. As a result, I've only released 1 chapter today. I'll try to finish yesterday's chapter tomorrow. Chapter 2585. Protector Shan's abnormal behavior surprised all the Primordial Realm experts in the discussion hall. Since when had Protector Shan become so easygoing with their understanding of him? After all, the person they were facing right now was not young Master Ming, nor was it Senior Ming or Senior Su, who were chaotic primes. In the Tianyuan family, Protector Shan would only lower his proud head before the 3 of them. When had he ever been polite to anyone else? Looks like this Jianqin isn't someone to be trifled with. He's actually trying to intimidate Protector Shan right from the start. From the looks of it, he's probably going to cause some trouble. Protector Shan is the strongest out of all of us. He's an 8th heavenly layer infinite prime right now. Even if he goes to some eternal empires or peak clans that reign over a plane, he'll be put to great use. Yet Jianqin is targeting Protector Shan as soon as he returns. He's just far too rash. 2 old men conversed secretly among the Primordial Realm experts present. They were the 2 old men who had gone out to stop Jianqin and forcibly take Jianqin back to the Tianyuan family. They were Protector Xing and Protector Bai, and they were both 2nd heavenly layer infinite primes. Rash? I don't think so. I can vaguely sense that Jianqin seems to be suppressing his anger, and it's burning extremely vigorously. If I've guessed correctly, a few of us protectors are probably going to be in trouble. Without a doubt, Protector Shan is one of them. Sitting beside the 2 old men, the gorgeously dressed woman with a seductive aura from head to toe also joined the discussion and expressed her opinion. Her name was Mei Ji, and she was known as Protector Mei. Protector Shan is an 8th heavenly layer infinite prime. Jianqin's cultivation doesn't seem to be very powerful either. It's said that he was only an overgod a few decades ago. Can he suppress Protector Shan? Protector Xing was doubtful. Don't forget that Jianqin is the patriarch of the Tianyuan family. The current Tianyuan family doesn't have great elders or ancestors who stand above the patriarch. Jianqin's identity as the patriarch basically means everything here. And I have a strong feeling that our patriarch is probably nowhere near as simple as we imagine him to be. Have you forgotten that when we first returned, Senior Su actually came out personally? How can someone who can make Senior Su come out personally be ordinary? Protector, Mei said secretly as she looked at Jianqin, who sat on the patriarch's throne with a stern face. Her red lips curled slightly as she smiled faintly. She thought, the patriarch really is far too manly right now. Patriarch, can I ask you a question first? At this moment, Protector Shan, who had just sat down, could not help but clasp his fist towards Jianqin. What's the question? Go ahead. Jianqin glanced past Protector Shan indifferently. He was very casual, as if he did not take Protector Shan seriously at all. Protector Shan immediately became furious when he saw how he looked down on him. He had never been looked down on like this in the Tianyuan family. However, when he thought about hell water, Protector Shan held himself back in the end. It's said that the patriarch possesses hell water. May I ask if that's true? Protector Shan asked. He desired hell water very much, so he had become impatient long ago. The eyes of all the primordial realm experts gathered in the discussion hall lit up when they heard about hell water. They all looked at Jianqin with burning desire. Even Protector Xing, Protector Bai, and Protector Mei, who had personally witnessed Jianqin bestow a droplet of hell water on Su Ran, reacted the same way. A gleam of light flashed through Jianqin's eyes as he came to a realization. With a flip of his hand, a jade bottle immediately appeared. The lid of the bottle opened automatically, and a droplet of crystalline, blue liquid slowly floated up from the bottle. It shone with a dazzling blue light. Immediately, the entire discussion hall was dyed a deep blue. It was quite a bewildering sight. Netherworld water. It really is the netherworld water. This presence, this blue light. It's definitely hell water. It can't be wrong. The discussion hall fell silent at first before erupting into an uproar. It became extraordinarily noisy. The eyes of all the infinite primes gathered there burned with desire. These people had never seen the underworld water before, but they were extremely familiar with its form and effects. It was a wondrous item of the world that even grand primes possessed obvious effects. If they used it on them, its effects would be even greater. It was a supreme treasure that could nourish the soul. I still have a lot of hell water, said Jianqin. Jade bottles flew out from his space ring one after another. A total of 8 bottles hovered before him. Every single bottle had its cap opened, and a droplet of hell water floated out from each bottle. There were a total of 8 droplets of hell water. They shone with resplendent light as they hovered before Jianqin silently. Immediately, the discussion hall fell silent. The 8 droplets of hell water made everyone hold their breaths. Heavens, Jianqin actually has so much hell water on him. Protector Shan was shocked. He stared at the 8 droplets of hell water as his heart beat faster. His blood surged. At that moment, he was even tempted to take all 8 droplets of hell water and flee. However, when he thought about the powerful formation around the Tianyuan family, he could only give up on that thought helplessly. Patriarch, I'm currently at a critical juncture in my cultivation. I urgently need hell water to break through. If I have hell water, my cultivation will definitely increase drastically. I might even reach a whole new level. I need a droplet of hell water. No, 3 droplets. I need 3 droplets of hell water. 3 droplets is enough, Protector Shan said urgently. His breathing had become heavy as he directly asked for hell water from Jianqin. The white-clothed Protector Shui and the emaciated Protector Qi were also staring at the underworld water. Protector Shui, on the other hand, appeared to be calm and unmoved. However, Protector Qi became rather impatient. Protector Qi opened his mouth, wanting to ask for hell water as well. However, when he saw how unmoved Protector Shui was, a sliver of surprise immediately appeared in his eyes. He could not help but ask through a communication technique, Protector Shui, don't you have any interest in hell water? Don't let your greed get to your head and lose your normal judgment. Do you think we can take hell water from Jianqin? Even Senior Su only obtained a droplet of hell water. Protector Shui replied through a communication technique. A gleam of light flashed through Protector Qi's eyes when he heard that. He could not help but study Jianqin properly before falling silent. Chapter 2586. Protector Shan's breathing became ragged as his eyes burned with desire. His blood surged. Hell water was even wondrous to grand primes, so it was even more effective to infinite primes like him. It was fatal to him. Even a single droplet was enough for him to risk his life for it, let alone 3 droplets. Who knows what kind of luck Jianqin has to possess 8 droplets of hell water. Apart from Senior Ming and Senior Su, I'm the strongest in the Tianyuan family right now. It's not excessive for me to only take 3 droplets. Protector Shan was unable to remain calm. He had already stood up from his chair. He clenched his fists and secretly gritted his teeth. Even if I can't get 3 droplets, just 2 droplets is fine too. 2 droplets of hell water. I have to get 2 droplets of hell water. Of course, it would be for the best if I could get 3 droplets. It's just a pity that this is the Tianyuan family, where there are 2 chaotic primes, Senior Ming and Senior Su. Otherwise, all 8 droplets of hell water would be mine if it were anywhere else. Not a single droplet would escape, thought Protector Shan. He was very ambitious, but he still maintained his last shred of rationality. He did not dare to act recklessly. That's right. I need 3 droplets of hell water. With 3 droplets of hell water, I'll be able to break through to the 9th heavenly layer of infinite prime very quickly, or even chaotic prime. Patriarch, think about it carefully. Just 3 droplets of hell water are enough for the Tianyuan family to gain a chaotic prime. I think you understand what a chaotic prime means to the Tianyuan family extremely well, said Protector Shan excitedly and urgently. Protector Shan, do you know the value of hell water? Jianqin remained teasing. Of course, said Protector Shan. Protector Shan said. His mind was filled with the underworld water. His entire mind was attracted by the underworld water, and he lost his normal judgment. He did not notice that something was wrong. In reality, half of the primordial realm experts gathered here had already sensed that something was off. From Jianqin's current expression, he seemed like he was toying with them. Many people acted like they were watching a show. Protector Shan was an 8th heavenly layer infinite prime. Apart from Mingxie and Su Ran, no one in the Tianyuan family could suppress him. They wondered how Jianqin would deal with him. At this moment, Jianqin said, Protector Shan, since you know the value of hell water, do you think you're worth 3 droplets with your cultivation as an 8th heavenly layer infinite prime? When Jianqin mentioned his cultivation as an 8th heavenly layer infinite prime, he did not seem to care at all. The feeling he gave off was like the 8th heavenly layer of infinite prime was nothing special. The eyes of all the primordial realm experts gathered in the discussion hall narrowed at that moment. They all stared at Jianqin. Protector Shan was an 8th heavenly layer infinite prime after all. Many people believed that no matter how displeased Jianqin was with Protector Shan, it was indeed rather inappropriate for him to mock Protector Shan so mercilessly. As a matter of fact, it was a little too much. Protector Shan, who yearned for hell water, was stunned as well. He seemed to be unable to react. He was an 8th heavenly layer infinite prime after all, the strongest protector of the Tianyuan family. He believed that his status was great, so he had never thought that Jianqin would treat him like this. At that moment, the discussion hall fell completely silent. Even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. Protector Shan only returned to his senses after a few seconds of being stunned. He immediately flew into a rage as he glared at Jianqin. A powerful presence erupted from his body as he called out fearlessly, Jianqin, what are you trying to do? Do you really think you're something just because you're the patriarch of the family? That you can look down on everyone else? Humph! How dare you treat us like this? Where's young Master Ming? I'd like to propose to young Master Ming that he strip you of your status as the patriarch of the family. The true patriarch of the Tianyuan family is young Master Ming, not you. Otherwise, do you really think that you would be able to get so many primordial realm experts to join the Tianyuan family with your abilities? Protector Shan spoke forcefully. Since he had already fallen out with Jianqin, there was no need for him to show any mercy. He spouted nonsense, directly ignoring Jianqin's status as the patriarch of the family. Many primordial realm experts nodded secretly when they heard what Protector Shan said at the end. They had joined the Tianyuan family precisely because of Ming Dong, even though none of them knew Ming Dong's true identity. Just the fact that he could get a peak chaotic prime to protect him and that the 2 alliances on the cloud plane did not dare to offend him was enough to show that Ming Dong's background was frightening. A clan that no one dared to offend and had no powerful opponents was naturally a perfect place for many primordial realm experts to cultivate in peace. As a matter of fact, they even treated it as a fat sheep that could fill their stomachs. Not only would joining an organization like that, not only did they not have to risk their lives everywhere, but they would also receive a large amount of salary and cultivation resources every year. Why not? As a result, in the eyes of many primordial realm experts, the only person they truly recognized was Ming Dong. Only Ming Dong could command them. They really did not take the so-called patriarch of the family seriously. Jianchen's face did not change at all. He said, "Who the patriarch of the Tianyuan family is has nothing to do with you. However, from today onwards, you are no longer a protector of our Tianyuan family. As the patriarch, I expel you from the Tianyuan family. Shiyu, has this person ever asked for more than what he should have received from our Tianyuan family?" Shiyu stood up and looked at Protector Shan. The light in her eyes flickered as she said hesitantly, "Protector Shan has spent a total of 15 years in our Tianyuan family. According to the agreement, he has actually received more than 50 years' worth of salary and 3/3 grade God tier heavenly resources, blazing fruits." Protector Shan paid the extra salary in advance. "It's basically borrowed," Shiyu added. Jianchen stared at Protector Shan and said coldly, "Return the salary you borrowed right now. Return the 3 blazing fruits as well, and then you can leave." With that, the entire place was thrown into an uproar. At that moment, even the senior members who sat at the back were stunned, let alone the primordial realm protectors. He was a mighty 8th heavenly layer infinite prime, yet Jianchen wanted to chase him away. Moreover, he wanted the protector to return all the money he owed without leaving any room for negotiation. At that moment, everyone could not help but wonder if they had heard wrong. "Jianchen, you've gone too far. It looks like I need to properly wake you up in young Master Ming's place, so that you understand just what you are in the Tianyuan family." Protector Shan was furious. He was utterly furious. He bellowed out, and his presence surged as he shot towards Jianchen with lightning speed. He seemed like he wanted to teach Jianchen a lesson. However, in reality, he was staring at the 8 droplets of hell water before Jianchen. His eyes burned with desire. "I have to obtain the hell water. Originally, I couldn't forcefully take it, but since you've provoked me, I have a reason to take action. Even if young Master Ming pursues the matter, I'll be able to stand my ground. However, I can't take all 8 droplets of hell water, just in case young Master Ming displeases me," thought Protector Shan. Protector Shan thought to himself. He looked incomparably furious on the surface, but in reality he had not lost his rationality. He knew what to do. Chapter 2587. In a single moment, Protector Shan arrived beside Jianchen. He extended his hand with lightning-like speed, directly reaching for the 3 droplets of hell water. When he struck out, his presence as an 8th heavenly layer infinite prime reached its peak as well. It enveloped Jianchen without holding back at all, suppressing Jianchen with his presence. Even the 3 droplets of hell water that he targeted were trapped by a mysterious power, preventing Jianchen from taking them back. When Protector Shan struck out, all the primordial realm experts in the discussion hall paid attention. They all gathered their attention and observed the situation. This was the most crucial moment. Hell water was so precious. If Protector Shan really did take it away, Jianchen would be utterly humiliated. From the beginning to the end, Jianchen acted like victory was within his grasp. He didn't panic at all. I wonder what he's relying on. Is it Senior Ming and Senior Su? That shouldn't be possible. I've stayed in the Tianyuan family for so long, but I've never seen the 2 of them interfere with the internal matters of the Tianyuan family, thought Protector Shan. As he watched Protector Shan charge towards Jianchen, a sliver of hesitation appeared in his eyes. He wanted to stop Protector Shan, but he held himself back in the end. This was because Protector Shui still lacked some recognition for the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan who had suddenly returned. The real show is about to begin. I wonder how Jianqin is going to get through this. Is he going to ask Senior Su for help? Meiji's eyes lit up as well. She stared at the sky with some charm. She was extremely curious and eager. Protector Shing and Protector Bai were the same. They had the same thoughts as Meiji. Of course, not all of the primordial realm experts were like that. Some of them sneered faintly. They wanted to see Jianqin make a fool of himself. All of this happened in a split second. With a flash, Protector Shan's hand appeared above a droplet of hell water. He moved so quickly that he had exceeded the reaction speed of the Divine King. Only primordial realm experts could catch him. Protector Shan's lips curled into a faint smile. He was extremely excited, and he already viewed the underworld water as his. However, at this moment, an extremely powerful sword intent suddenly permeated the surroundings. The terrifying sword qi enveloped the entire discussion hall in a single instance. Above Jianqin's head was a white sword. A finger-sized strand of white sword qi appeared out of nowhere. It shone with dazzling light. The appearance of the strand of sword qi immediately shocked all the primordial realm experts in the discussion hall. They were astounded. This was because they could sense a killing power that sent chills down their spines from the sword qi. They could not help but feel fear. The sword qi seemed small, only the size of a finger, but its power and the energy it contained were earth-shaking. Protector Shan, who was about to come in contact with the first droplet of hell water, was shocked. His eyes immediately narrowed as he stared at the small sword qi above Jianqin's head. He felt a sense of fatal danger. Without any hesitation, he gave up on the droplet of hell water he was about to obtain in an extremely decisive manner. He retreated even faster than he had come, pulling away from Jianqin in a single instance. However, it was already too late. Jianqin's profound sword qi had already shot out. It moved with unbelievable speed, as if it had broken through the laws of time and space, completely ignoring the limits of distance. It arrived between Protector Shan's eyebrows in a single instance and stabbed into his soul. Arg! Immediately, Protector Shan cried out miserably. His soul was heavily injured, almost cleaved in half by the profound sword qi. At the same time, Jianqin stood up from the patriarch's seat. His face was emotionless and his eyes were cold. He directly struck Protector Shan's chest with a powerful palm strike. His strike was extremely powerful, and with Protector Shan's soul injured, he was basically unable to resist at all. At the same time, he did not put up any defenses, directly enduring the strike with his fragile body. As a result, his chest had basically been pierced by Jianqin's strike. His organs were reduced to mush immediately. Protector Shan was directly blown out of the discussion hall like a cannonball. Blood spurted from his mouth as he lay on the ground and wailed out. He was powerless to stand up again. His primordial spirit had suffered tremendous damage, almost collapsing, body and soul obliterated. All the primordial realm protectors present in the discussion hall were stunned. Their eyes widened as they stared at the wailing Protector Shan blankly. While they were shocked, they also struggled to accept this. Protector Shan was an 8th heavenly layer infinite prime. He was the undisputed, strongest person among all the primordial realm protectors in the Tian Yuan clan. He was the undisputed king, yet he was actually so weak in Jianqin's hands. He had been heavily injured in a single clash. Such a result was out of everyone's expectations. Just what level of cultivation does this Jianqin possess? At that moment, all the primordial realm protectors wondered. Their understanding of Jianqin stopped at a few decades ago, when Jianqin faced off against the heavenly demon religion in the divine kingdom of Pingtian. At that time, Jianqin was only an overgod. He could not even be considered as the divine king. Yet now he had actually heavily injured Protector Shan, an 8th heavenly layer infinite prime, in a single clash. This stunned everyone, and they could not help but gasp. This Jianqin is actually so powerful. After recovering from her shock, Mei Ji's eyes lit up. She stared at Jianqin without blinking at all. The patriarch's strength has actually become so terrifying. This. The senior members of the Tianyuan clan were stunned as well. They looked at Protector Shan in disbelief as they stared at him in such a horrible state. Protector Shan, you have offended your superiors and tried to steal hell water from me. You deserve death, but I'll spare you since you're a protector of the Tianyuan family. Men, carry him away. Once he wakes up, make him pay everything he owes. Remove him from his position as a protector and chase him out of the Tianyuan family. Jianqin sat down steadily and ordered emotionlessly. He possessed a sense of dignity that left no room for doubt. He had already been merciful against Protector Shan. He had purposefully weakened the power of the profound sword qi, or Protector Shan would have suffered far more injuries. He might have even died from a single strike. A few Divine King immediately arrived outside the discussion hall and carried Protector Shan away. Chapter 2588. With Jianqin's order, the entire place was thrown into an uproar. All the upper echelon of the Tianyuan family gathered there were stunned once again. The protectors looked at one another as if they had never expected Jianqin to be so ruthless towards the three protectors who had not been present. After all, they were not Protector Shan. Protector Shan had indeed gone overboard with his actions in the discussion hall. Expelling him from the Tianyuan family was understandable. However, the three protectors had been expelled from the Tianyuan family because they had not been present. Did they not have this special privilege as infinite primes? At that moment, basically all the protectors and the upper echelon of the Tianyuan family shared the same thought. After all, they were primordial realm experts, not overgods or divine king. In many large organizations, any primordial realm expert would be worshipped like an ancestor. They would try their best to fulfill any of their requests as they were afraid of displeasing them. They would never be like Jianqin, directly expelling the Tianyuan family over such a small matter. After all, there were only around a dozen infinite primes in the current Tianyuan family. Without any exaggeration, every single one of them was extremely esteemed. Xiu? Hey, yeah, immediately take people to where the three people live and expel them from the Tianyuan family, Jianqin said coldly. He was decisive and resolute, leaving no room for negotiation. Patriarch, that's not very appropriate. They're primordial realm experts, after all, and two of them are at the 5th heavenly layer. A primordial realm protector stood up in the discussion hall and pleaded. Originally, he wanted to directly call Jianqin by his name, but when he thought about the strength Jianqin had just displayed when he heavily injured Protector Shan, he immediately changed his mind. So what if they're 5th heavenly layer infinite primes? They enjoy the resources of our Tianyuan family, but they ignore the rules of our Tianyuan family. Let alone 5th heavenly layer infinite primes. Even 9th heavenly layer infinite primes don't need people like that, Jianqin said coldly. Jianqin said coldly. He enveloped the Tianyuan clan with the senses of his soul. Through the formations, he clearly knew that the three primordial realm experts were not in seclusion. People like him who only knew how to eat and do nothing were definitely not allowed to stay. Xiu and He yet immediately left the discussion hall. They took the Divine King to where the three primordial realm experts resided. The Divine Kings were naturally useless before the primordial realm experts, but they were the upper echelon of the disciplinary hall of the Tianyuan family. Very soon, the three primordial realm experts were called out. When they learned that the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan had already expelled them, they were all furious. You're expelling us from the Tianyuan family? Just because of Jianqin? We're primordial realm experts. We've come to serve young Master Ming. Who is Jianqin? What right does he have to expel us? The three primordial realm experts roared out. They were utterly exasperated. They directly charged into the discussion hall and confronted Jianqin. Of course, even though the three of them were furious, They did not dare to touch Protector Shan. After all, the Tianyuan family had chaotic primes. They could ignore Jianqin, but they had to consider the two chaotic primes. Let's go find young Master Ming and get him to remove him from his position as patriarch. Does he really think that he can order us around just because he's the patriarch? Jianqin doesn't have that right. The three primordial realm experts left the discussion hall furiously in a hurry and directly went to find Ming Dong. At this moment, Ming Dong strolled through the garden with Yun Xiaoyan in the forbidden grounds of the Tianyuan family. They enjoyed their time together peacefully. They did not ask about any matters of the Tianyuan family at all, as if they did not care about the matters of the Tianyuan family at all. At this moment, a female attendant reported that the three primordial realm experts wanted to see him. Ming Dong frowned when he heard that. He had already warned the Tianyuan family not to disturb him unless there was something particularly important, as he did not like dealing with these matters at all. Moreover, now that Jianqin had returned, even if there really were something particularly important, he would be the one to deal with it. Why had the three primordial realm experts come to see him? Ming Dong, don't tell me the three protectors are looking for you because of your brother Jianqin? Yun Xiaoyan asked gently from beside Ming Dong. A gleam of light flashed through Ming Dong's eyes when he heard that. He naturally could not ignore Jianqin since it was related to him. He immediately summoned the three protectors. Greetings, young Master Ming. Very soon, the three protectors appeared before Ming Dong. They put away their haughty attitude and became extremely respectful. Afterwards, they complained about Jianqin's tyrannical way of doing things, adding fuel to the fire and vilifying him. However, before they could finish, Ming Dong frowned and raised his hand to stop them. His face sank slightly and he said, "Are you saying that Jianqin has expelled the three of you from the Tianyuan family?" The three protectors rejoiced inside when they saw Ming Dong's expression change. They thought Ming Dong was displeased by Jianqin's tyrannical way of doing things, so they clasped their fists in a hurry. "Indeed, please uphold justice for us, young Master Ming." Ming Dong's face sank, and he said, "Jianqin is the patriarch of the Tianyuan family. His words are the supreme will of the Tianyuan family. Since he has expelled you, you are no longer a part of the Tianyuan family from now on." The three protectors' faces changed drastically when they heard that. "Young Master Ming, shut up. Jianqin is my best friend. Offending him is worse than offending me. Yet you dare to speak ill of my brother in front of me. You even want me to remove my brother from his position as patriarch. Do you think you can stand above the patriarch just because you're infinite primes? You want to ignore the patriarch's orders?" Ming Dong snorted coldly. The expressions of the three protectors changed when they saw Ming Dong's attitude. They looked at each other, and their faces became extremely ugly. They had never thought that Ming Dong would actually protect Jianqin like this. After all, the three of them were primordial realm experts. Even in peak organizations, they possessed a certain amount of status. Now that they had been slapped in the face mercilessly after speaking so submissively, the three of them did not feel good. "Uncle Ming, expel the three of them from the Tianyuan family." As soon as Ming Dong finished speaking, Ming Xia silently appeared, scaring the three protectors so much that their faces turned green. In the end, the three protectors left the Tianyuan family dejectedly. All the primordial realm experts in the discussion hall became stern. They had been secretly observing the movements of the three protectors with the senses of their souls. Although the senses of their souls were unable to penetrate the forbidden grounds where Ming Dong resided due to the formations, they all saw the three protectors emerge dejectedly after entering the forbidden grounds. Afterwards, they packed up their things and left the Tianyuan family dejectedly. Originally, all the protectors in the discussion hall wanted Ming Dong to suppress Jianqin, but the fate of the three protectors directly made their hearts sink. Their final sliver of hope was extinguished.